G'day everyone, good to see you. How many have we got? That's my numbers still haven't come up, so I don't know how many yet. Anyway, Deborah's here. G'day, Deborah. I get to listen to from the beginning. Oh, well, daylight savings, we've gone back an hour. You guys have gone back forward an hour, so that's sort of shrunk us by the difference by 2 hours. So made a big difference in that regard. So I'm still 10:30 here, Australian Eastern Standard Time, but daylight savings is gone as of last night. Now I hadn't updated my sort of times and stuff like that in the previous one. I realised that. I didn't realise that you guys had gone earlier than us. Actually, some parts of the world even went like in March, the middle of March, I think it was. So quite a few, some towards the end of March, which was last week, and the other ones were about 2 weeks ago. So some of the dates, some of the times and all that are all skewy and stuffed completely in that regard. So yeah, I do apologise for the past stuff. I have updated all my times for both tonight's and this one. So that's all sorted. Yeah, so had to try and actually remember, get the current time with my current time at that, and then -1 to basically, because we were going back like last night. Well, 7 hours ago, we went back an hour. So yes. Because last year, I think I actually forgot to actually take that into consideration, and I stuffed it up completely royally by an hour. Anyway, that wasn't the case this time around. G'day, Lukey. Neff, good to see you, mate. Raymond, good to see you. Blinky, as always, it's a pleasure in more ways than one. G'day, Shell. Yep. So move too fast. Got to remind myself the mouse rolling in StreamYard is a bit faster than the other one, so trying to get used to remind myself of that. Yes. Figo HD, good to see you. Yes. Very bad times. Yes. It's the masking time. Unless you're unmasked. I didn't realize I was that magical. Thanks, Shell. Move through these. John, good to see you, mate. Felix, yes. And the happy Easter of the Catholic and Protestant, or the different denominations that derive from Protestants. Not to confuse. I actually changed to the Gregorian because it's based on the Gregorian calendar. So I didn't want to be, throwing all, because you've got Methodists, you've got, different groups, Baptists or whatever. There's so many variations in denominations or groups. It would have become impossible to write them all down. So I just used the generic without specifying anybody of the Western churches. It's sort of called Easter. So happy birthday to all you people. We Orthodox are next month. So it only coincides once every 4 years. It's something to do with the leap years, I think, in regards, and some of the sort of the orbit of the moon and stuff like that, the way it's calculated. I can't remember it exactly. So, so something in regard to all that. Yes, old and new calendars. Yes, and traditions that can't violate those old calendars. Yes. So Greeks sort of hedge their bets, like Christmas is the same as the Western, where the Russian Orthodox, on the other hand, still use the old calendar for even Christmas. Very confusing for a lot of people. Yes. But what's in it? In a date, date is a date. I mean, at the end of the day, at some point, there'll probably come even a more accurate calendar in the future that may require a revision of those things again. So I don't get too wound up with the calendar things. I see it more as a tradition that people follow because they've always done that, and it makes it easier to maintain their general traditions. So nothing wrong with it. It's just realizing that part of it's inaccurate. All our calendars are to some extent inaccurate in terms of, if you were to ask a physicist, goblets of fire. Harry Potter nerd. Fair enough, Shell. I've seen some Harry Potter, but I sort of it's, if I was to basically let me put it this way, I had the choice of the Bourne type action type stuff like that, or I'd probably be watching the action stuff. Even though I can be cerebral in other matters when it comes to sort of before I did become cerebral as a youngster, I was more physical and more interested in that side of things rather than the cerebral things. It's just a different environment changed me differently, but I still soccer I follow, do all that sort of stuff. I still entertain myself with like the physical stuff, just the way I am. I'd rather be outdoors than indoors. Unless I'm playing computer games, that's different. That will keep me indoors. So, first-person shooters, third-person shooters, strategy games are sort of my favourites. So, yes. Now, has that interfered with your normal morning schedule, mate? Are you confused? Has it thrown your circadian clock out of whack? Having to adjust to these Eastern Australians with their daylight saving stuff? Did I miss Zombie? I did. Zombie, g'day. See, I didn't use your name today. G'day, Jared. Good to see you, mate. Just got out of the sauna. Sounds good, mate. Some pork chops. Yes, very nice. I'm going to pop over to the old man to drop him off a couple of things, including those, remember those supplements that knock out the senescent cells. So I'm going to take those around to him. I've grabbed those. Find out whether he got his delivery. I got my delivery for my the Cerule sort of cream. Whether he got his came in. Probably tell me where to stick it, but anyway, that's a different thing. He's old-fashioned, like that. Sort of, why did you buy me cream? It was a competition, Dad. What do you think I am, a woman? I'll get those remarks. He's very old-fashioned, some of those remarks. So, yes. Anyway, need to explain to him, trying to help. I actually know the result because I actually saw Bart send me the live stream of the Zoom of the Cerule group. So I did actually get an opportunity to see all that. He hasn't bloody done the video yet. So, and I'm surprised he hasn't done the damn video. I actually sent him an email. I said, why have you done the video to announce to people? He's sort of, I'm too, he's probably too involved with all the things he's found new interests, being high functioning autistic. He sort of gets stuck into things, so he finds a new thing. Now he's in the new house. He's got these new little things that are all getting him. Yes, he bloody won. Exactly. He should have told you guys. Bloody hell. It's been a while now, quite a few days. It's been a few days, or what is it, 2 days or whatever. So, yes. Did quite well. But she gave him a good run for his money. Bloody hell, right up to the, he won by 13. So, 227 against 214. So, he won by 13. So, it was quite close right to the end, So, she kept going and going at him. And he hasn't done it because you know what? He's not going to appear because he's doing all these he hasn't done a live stream or anything because he said, he's got the home to focus on. So now that he's got the home to focus on, you won't see him for a couple of days, and then he'll probably tell you then, but, I've already told you, so so yeah, he was quite manic about it and all that, not fretting and all that. At the end, because he sent me a message on Facebook, sort of a message and said, I don't think we have to do any more, because I said, do you want me to go and try and actually find even more people or stuff like that? He said, no, I think we're done. I think she's because her sort of rate started slowing down. So I think she realized he was going to continually go, and I think she had sort of exhausted all her sources. So pretty much at that stage, I think it was, what was it, about still an hour and a half or something like that. So can't remember now. It was, and pretty much I don't think she made much after that, and that was about it. And she I think may have cut a bit into his lead, but not by much. He still won, so by 13. So did pretty well. But yes, that was a long slog. So I think it exhausted him. It was sort of like he did all that, and now the anticlimax. He was I could see him. He was wearing his suit and he was talking. He was really well, but he wasn't as energetic, like he normally is, and so it was. He was exhausted, mentally and physically exhausted by the whole process. It was intense competition trying to get there. So yeah. Anyway, he needs a break. So there you guys know, at least he's done well. He got there in the end. No, this is a clone of Roy without the glasses. Yes, he's quite capable of doing that, Blinky. Very capable. Tanks, good to see you, mate. and honest. G'day, honest. And Fappers. G'day, Fapnado. Good to see you, mate. Yips. Nearly lost my spot. It's quite warm yesterday in Tassie. It was really, the heat was intense. For whatever reason, the sun was intense. I've got a bit of I didn't get burnt, but I did get a much stronger pinky look today as a consequence of the intensity. I'm still not taking niacin. I'm doing another month. I'm just trying to see, can I do another month, like and see whether I, beyond the nose, I didn't really get much, I haven't really sustained any peeling. So, and I'm not even doing, I'm not doing cod liver oil. I'm not doing niacin. I'm not doing any of this sort of stuff. I'm just sticking just to, meat, which is semi-lean. I mean, sometimes the pork does have big fat pieces, but I'm trying to stick just to see, just a standard steak, more or less steak heavy, a bit of dairy or whatever. That doesn't make much difference. Diet, whether that can still, even with intense heat and radiation and being out in the sun quite a bit, whether you can, and being a whitey, not being very dark skinned, whether that you can still do it in a sense. And remember, the southern hemisphere the sun is more intense than the northern hemisphere because of the axis of the Earth. So when you guys have your summer in the elliptical orbit, well, actually, we're going like that, moving on the spiral arm, but we're moving like that around the sun. But in the elliptical orbit of spiraling around the sun as we're moving through interstellar space, you are slightly further away in your summer. That's why the light isn't intense. Anybody that's gone to the southern hemisphere will notice the light is very intense compared to the northern hemisphere in summer. There's a difference, and that intensity is because of the axis of the Earth. And so in the southern hemisphere, the sun is way more intense. It's another reason why we've got higher skin cancer rates in Australia compared to other parts of the world. And so when you put a lot of oxidized PUFA from vegetable oils into your skin, you're going to sustain far more damage in the southern hemisphere than in the northern hemisphere as a consequence. But here's a whitey experimenting with minimal, just stock standard animal foods, with not putting blood on my face or skin like some of the tribal people do to protect their skin, and nothing like that, and just looking at through the major summer months, seeing whether you still can incur some level of protection. Now, even Manabeling and a few others say, "Oh, your skin still looks pretty good, for your age, even though you're having these bouts of burning or whatever." So it's pretty much demonstrating that you can, I just want to push it for another month, and then I'll be back to my normal stuff to youthify my skin again. But I mean, it's not too bad, I cut myself this morning down here, but it's it's not as if the skin is too bad, in that regard, but it's probably been irradiated far more than usual. But I'm only doing it once. I'm not going to do it next year. But I just wanted to see the sort of difference, see the sort of results I could get and stuff like that. So interesting. You know what I mean? Gotta experiment. Good to hear. Good to hear. They don't help anyway. And unless you're the one coughing, you reduce your vital load towards others. Yes. Remicla, good to see you. Oh, thank you. Because even my friends, they usually go into the show and they go, "You're crazy," you know. But oh well. Anyway, got to try these experiments. You got to see what happens. Actually, my skin used to look really pasty, really bad 15 years ago when I was really sick. You know, my skin looked far worse than it is today. So it is getting better. Probably not the last couple of months. The intensity, sort of lying in the sun. But it's all part of a good experiment. Thank you. Or thank you to those others. Harry Celladina says mineral waters contain uranium-like and tap waters, Elastina, and he likes Vichy Catalan. BC says Sicilian is good to have in water. How clean should our water sources be? That's an impossible thing to answer. There are so many variations of mineralization in the Earth's crust between different parts of the world, that the mineralization of water, the tear fractionation as well, all sorts of things are so varied. It's an impossible thing to answer. You know, I could talk about certain parts of the planet that I know that I've looked into, but I can't talk about every single planet. You know, certain parts of Australia, uranium in the actual soil and uranium in the actual water table and stuff like that is higher. But, you know, if you go to the desert sort of environments and parts of South Australia and Western Australia, but if you look at places like Tasmania, it's not the case. So, God, the variations are so many and far between. It's like all sorts of mineral deposits. Selenium levels are different between different parts, either highly concentrated or very little. Iodine can have different concentrations. There's no real uniformity to this sort of stuff. You know, there are maps that are done by geological organizations that actually can show the different mineralizations. There are some sites that actually provide mineral analysis of different aquifers, different water tables, and different parts of the world, like rivers and streams and lakes and whatever else. So there are so many variations that's you just can't give a generic, you know, sort of statement like that. So don't know where that's coming from, but anyway, I haven't seen his video, so I can't really comment precisely. But all I can say is that pretty much all I can say is that there are going to be a lot of variations in that regard. So you, depending on which country you are in, your own authorities, sort of whether it's the Department of Environment or an equivalent of that department, or a sort of primary industry type organizations or departments or ministries may hold some of that information that you can actually access on the web. So it's going to, and it's going to vary from location to location depending on the measurements, when they were taken, the period, the depths, the types. Then you'd have to check with your water authority to find out where they're accessing the water. So you can actually look up those. So it's quite involved in that regard. There's probably some sites out there that have done some of this sort of stuff, put some of this sort of stuff, but a lot of it I find is very regional. So, so people in certain regions have done it, but they're not in all. So it's a very hard one to sort of answer in that regard. Sometimes the sources, the elevation will change. I can see Mr. Kerr asking about deuterium. The elevation also will change due to the level of exposure to UV, will change the fractionation of that water. So, yeah, endless potentials of variations. So, yeah, really hard to explain something like that. There's even sort of different sort of states of water to some extent, and it changes the viscosity. Water primarily on this planet is the oxygens are very maintain very good geometry, but the hydrogens sort of are all over the place, and so they tend to like if you had really good symmetrical hydrogens within the water, what would happen is the water would shatter in your hand, as an example. But it doesn't. It sort of slides off, in a viscous fluid type way. That's because of the hydrogens being erratically distributed. So, and how they bind different minerals there are a lot of different chemical processes that can slightly vary because of the chemistry of the soil and the environment they're in. So yeah, it can become quite complex, mate. To sort of it's like to explain these sort of things would take hours to sort of go through or even looked at one area and sort of So it's you really want a precise answer on that sort of stuff. You got to go and look at and get maps and information in regards to measurements that have been taken in your locality. Because don't worry about other localities, because the primary one should be concerned for your own health and what's going in your body. So yeah, I would check those different organisations and see what they've got. If they don't have much on the website, call them. Does work. Calling people, they can direct you to the right sort of place in many regards. Anyway, hope that helped. Anyway, can you explain deuterium depletion in the sunlight? How is neutrons released, chemically worked out, blah, blah, blah. That'd be a long explanation. But suffice it to say, you've got two stable isotopes of, okay, so in terms of the hydrogen, you will have, the stock standard, which has got a neutron and an electron. In basically deuterium, it's got basically a proton and an electron. In basically deuterium, there's a proton with basically a neutron attached to it, and it's doubles the weight in a sense, and sort of the size density. So what happens is when our bodies can strip those off, so through the glycolysis and lipolysis and the Krebs cycle, you've got these enzymatic parts which are called dehydrogenase. So they basically are stripping off these hydrogens, and the body can actually clear those out at a certain rate. And then it can vary slightly between people, but at a certain rate, it can clear them out. So it's a rough estimate. From sunlight, it's about per hour. It's estimated at 19 parts per million, but that's an estimate. Nobody's really precisely measured it. It's an estimate. And pretty much as long as your body can actually clear and then urinate out part of that. It does use deuterium in other biological processes. It is a growth factor, so it doesn't use it in other areas. But as long as it can keep the metabolic water that is basically in the actual mitochondria deuterium free, that's the key thing. So the less you eat of deuterium rich foods, which is basically sugar, those sort of things, the less work needs to be done by the body to deplete, which means that within that water, the protons and electrons that will provide to the electron chain to pump through the protons and, you know, use the electrons to basically power the electron chain in order to basically get the pumps to work. So to pump through the protons, and then they create a gradient, and that gradient then is sufficient to basically force itself through the what we call ATP synthase to create energy. Now, if you get some protons in there, they can break those nanomotors. They can go in there, and as they are rotating very fast, at 6,000 RPM, they're rotating very fast, and you get something which is larger than larger than a proton, a neutron that goes through, it will bust those nanomotors. And that's then, if you do that to too many over time, you will lose lose energy, and loss of energy or capacity to produce energy through ATP synthase will basically means that the cell can become senescent, damaged, dysfunctional. You will age faster, basically. That's why I always say sugar ages people faster. So, yes. But it's something that I will do in the future to explain it a bit more detail on all the foods and stuff like that. But generally speaking, I've talked about it a bit in the live streams. I've talked about it a bit in terms of cancer in my cancer video. There's plenty of people out there that explain deuterium depletion and do all the nice little sort of graphics, how it all works and how the electron chain works and stuff like that. So, I don't need to replicate all that. It's already there. Anybody can go and Google it and find out. But suffice it to say that the lower the deuterium levels in your body, the better. Not too low, because you still need some deuterium as a growth factor and for other biological processes, but you don't need too much. So it's a between 100 and 130, and the sweet spot is around about 120 parts per million. So most fats are below the 120, and most proteins are between the 120 and 130, and most sugars are above the 130. So sugars are a bigger problem. And the more sugars you have, some sugars, you can still get depletion. If you're in the tropics, sun will deplete much faster. If you're basically, doing a number of other activities, like fasting and stuff like that, they can also help. So there's a number of things that you can do to reduce the amount of deuterium in your body. But at the end of the day, if you overload it like a lot of people do, and the big overloader isn't even sugar, it's vegetable oils, seed oils, which are at 255 parts per million compared to sugar, which is 155. So you can see it's 100 times, it's near, 100 parts per million extra above just standard sugar. That's how toxic seed oils are. Where animal fats like lard is 115. So that makes the difference in that regard. And the rate of depletion depends on a lot of factors: exposure to UV through the day, the type of things you're eating, how healthy your existing mitochondria are to be able to do, how much energy can you produce to do the job. The more damage you do, the quicker you accelerate this aging process, because you've got less capacity to deplete, less capacity to basically deal with the things. That's why people that have got a lot of damaged mitochondria, have to be on a protocol like a low deuterium water, more fat, and therapeutic levels of protein and stuff like that. So there's a completely different kettle of fish approach that you have to approach it in terms of therapeutics for certain people and all that. But for general people, just eat your steak with plenty of fat, animal fats, and you should be fine. And get out into the sun is the take-home message. Another comment from Lukey. Yes, I am. Baptized 54 years, well, 53 years probably. How old was I? Back then they used to baptize you pretty young, a couple of months or whatever. Yeah, so I'm nearly 55 now, so I probably was just about 54 years ago. Yeah. So, and I did move away from the faith for a while. I became an atheist as a youngster, a bit radical in my youthful years. So I've been there, done that. I sort of can understand some of the young people and how they can be very easily radicalized because of you have a tendency to see the world in a black and white way. You get older and wiser, you realize it's a bit more grey and a bit more nuanced and a bit more a different thing altogether in the way of viewing it. But yeah, it's sort of yeah, it's been a long path back to the faith, you know. And it didn't actually go, I didn't go directly to the faith as due to faith alone. It was basically as the edifice of string theory and M theory and all these sort of parallel universes. And because I always was a believer of the anthropic principle, that this universe was created to basically bring about us, in a sense. And with parallel universe and all that, it was just it was considered just an accident, just one of those accidental things of, you know, a relative accident in the scheme of things of these, you know, parallel universes that were being created continuously. But as this whole edifice of has literally fallen to pieces, and you know, most intelligent scientists realize that that really this is it, this universe, but we don't fully understand it, and we're starting to do measurements and all that, which are sort of putting a spanner in the works. In, you know, so we created dark energy, dark matter, all these sort of things. Even these are starting to unravel because of some of the more recent measurements and some better measurements of the distances, of more precise parallax measurements of different, you know, distant galaxies and stuff like that, more precise measurements to determine the age of the universe and many other things that have happened, and better understanding of some of the actual relationships between those measurements and the background sort of radiation of the early, you know, the microwave background radiation. So we're starting to understand it better in a more deeper way. This isn't a physics thing, so I'm not going to go into that sort of stuff. But I realized that basically I'd gone down the wrong path. And so it was much easier under those circumstances. I was able to come back to path, to faith, but in a different way, yeah, than other people. But it's because I'm very much an empiricist and a scientifically minded as a person, and so I've come back in a very different way. And I'm happy I'm back with the faith, in a sense. So I definitely do find it uncomfortable with some of the North American Orthodox people. They tend to have embraced creationism, which I reject. You know, I believe that the world was created, the universe was created by God, but it was created by the laws that we're uncovering to unfold in a certain way. And even the fathers of the church within the Greek world basically see that separation. We're not scientists. They say we're here for purposes of faith and purposes of, bringing people closer to the light and away from darkness. And it's, they, as far as they're concerned, the Bible doesn't concern itself with the physical realm in the way it actually works. That's for the scientists, and even the early church, subscribed that too. Venerated all of the Greek philosophers, scientists, and stuff like that basically looked into these areas and were looking into these areas. And it was sort of this separation between that which is Caesar's, that which is God's is God's. God's focus is on faith, not on science. So that's where I have a bit of difficulty with some of the American Orthodox people who tend to come from a Protestant background and bring some of their creationist nonsense with them. So now you know my differences. Yes, I'm a believer in evolution and the scientific method and empiricism, and I can reconcile all that very comfortably with faith. And I know a number of religious leaders in Greece that were basically, like in Greece, you'll find religious people or priests, actual priests, who basically, belong to whether far right parties or far left parties. One in my neighborhood was a communist. So the church doesn't tell, like the Catholics or other denominations, doesn't tell the priests what to believe in terms of politics or science or anything like that or whatever. It doesn't interfere. It's a theological mission from Christ in terms of saving people from the darkness. So when people start going into realms which they're not trained in and all that, and start making all these, it's basically the tradition of basically trying to create, trying to explain historically and scientifically the faith. It comes from a Protestant tradition, not from an Orthodox tradition. So these people that do promote this creationist version of orthodoxy, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not calling them heretics of the Orthodox faith, but I think that they're drawing a long bow where they shouldn't, because that's not what the fathers preach, and they don't preach creationism or promote it in that regard. They see a separation between faith and science in that regard, and it's not for them to basically explain science and what scientists uncover. It's for them to basically encourage people to become better versions of themselves and move closer to the light and away from darkness. That's the focus, not to play politics. And that's where the danger happens when basically Orthodox people ignore faith in this way and start introducing all these other philosophies and talk about and try and incorporate into the faith for other philosophies, sciences, history, and it's usually ends up being pseudo-science, pseudo-history, pseudo-nonsense, and trying to, that is the Protestant tradition, as far as I'm concerned. It's not basically, the sort of the rationalist tradition, to be more precise, where I'm an empiricist, not a rationalist. Rationalists basically believe in computer models. Rationalists basically believe that you can actually, we are so smart that we can basically, like little gods, can work out exactly how everything works. No, unless it's experimentally proven. It's, it's just basically a hypothesis or basically an opinion. But rationalists basically think they can. The rationalist movement did start in the early part of the 20th century and promoted this sort of thinking. And that's where you had this creationism emerge, all these different groups trying to, you see it even in economic rationalism, you see it in all these sort of things where they think that they can determine everything rationally. You know, they can work out perfect models as if the world works like that. You know, our world is in constant flux and change, and has a lot of interacting parts which are so complex, and so from the simplicity comes a lot of complexity. Anybody that's looked at the Madrigal type patterns and stuff like that realizes that, you know, any human that thinks that they can conceptualize and understand this beautiful universe that was created 13 billion years ago by you know, what lies beyond time space, which we call God, if they think that they can truly understand to the same level and put themselves on a pedestal of godliness, you know, they're deluding themselves. They should be focused less on basically trying to be little gods on planet Earth, and more focused on faith and basically being good people and good to others, and basically trying to encourage people to be better versions of themselves in an ethical way. So that's all I'll say on this subject on this holy day. So we will move on and look at other things. Anyway. Concussion. Sounds familiar, but I'm not sure I can remember it. Yeah, we used to run around in we used to put things on and stuff like that as well. Kids. Yeah. At least we had fun. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of kid in you now and then. I do remember all this stuff. Yes. Probably the hardest first-person shooter that I ever played was Raven Shield. Anybody can remember that? I mean, you just had to be shot once, hit once, and some of the AIs there were less forgiving compared, and it was, you know, you really had to cover well to make sure, and it took ages to try and get through a level in order to avoid getting shot. So, yeah, that was probably the hardest one out of the first-person shooters that I did ever played. Gosh. Yeah, they're good. They're pretty good. From now on, I only have very rarely like the fermented natural homemade sodas. It's a lot of things, you know. The nice thing about it out there now, there's so many things that are available compared to the past. So, but also there's crap as well. There's a lot of, you know, crappy things, pseudo crappy things, and all that. Now I better put some of this stuff up which I haven't actually put up yet. So I better. Because Loki's going to say, I'm putting all this stuff up. Why aren't you sharing it? Sorry, Loki. Trying to get through catching up with the live stream. Okay. I'll share this one. I'll put myself out of the image. An extremely powerful mind. I wouldn't go that far. Let's just temper it back a bit, please. Yes, let's say less than just slightly more intelligent than the other dumb monkeys. Just another dumb monkey with a bit more intelligence. Let's just keep it at that level. That's as far as it goes, guys. Let's not over-exaggerate things, Loki. And consuming dietary glucose might be better than fructose, but it's still pointless and harmful. Actually, I need to zoom that out, don't I? These far too zoomed in. Come further out. Oops. There you go. Repeat followers. The eyes. Repeat followers. Hey, that's extra fiber for them. Don't give them fiber. Don't give them a fiber source, Lukey. Yes, yes, yes. I love the eyes. Ah, yes. Yes, yes, they do get excited, those repeat followers. Very much, very much. Yes, yes, she's a bit earlier. That's true. Oh, poor Blinky. See, that's the problem with you, Westies. You know, you're locked into that sort of that sliding sort of level. Australia, the real Australia, that is, goes forward and then comes back to you. The rest of the world does the same thing. It must be devastating for you. Actually, now I can bag you. I'm silly because my sister's actually left Western Australia, gone to Victoria. The poor thing. She was lonely. So she's gone to Victoria where her oldest sister is. So she moved. So after, because she got there just before the lockdowns. And so for the whole year, she's more or less been in, isolated in Western Australia. Can't get a husband over from Greece, or any of her kids. Can't fly over to go on holidays very easily, and can't even move between states because the level of lockdowns in Western Australia were quite severe. So, yes, as a consequence, she's got out. She got out of the place. She's escaped Blinky. G'day, you're an animal. Yes, yes. Fat lovers here. This is the new Fat Lovers show. Actually, I used to play Age of Empire years and years ago. God, when it first came out, I played on a laptop. I actually paid for that laptop. I had to fly over to Melbourne to buy the laptop. This is back in the 90s, because I'd built another computer down here because I was into that sort of stuff. A bit late after that, I sort of got into building and selling, but I wanted a top of the range laptop. I'd made some money. I had quite a few grand, and I said, "Nah, I'm gonna go." I flew over to Melbourne and bought myself a laptop. It cost me $5,000 back then. We're talking about in the 90s. That's a lot of money back then. And I bought one of the, and basically I was playing Age of Empire at the time on it. So my brother Sean used to turn up back in those days and goes, "What the freaking hell are you playing?" So I sort of showed him. So I got him into computer gaming as well, him and Kim. So they got into, and now their kids have been into it. So it got me to blame. Nothing like the meal. Yeah, look, I still enjoy computer gaming. So I know some of my friends sort of frown on it or look at me and go, "You're not young anymore, Harry." Really? So I probably don't play as much as I used to, but yeah. Mate, you'll find anything with a pulse hot. I know. You can't help yourself. But you still came second to Bart. That's okay. He still won. That's the main thing. It's pretty, pretty good at basically. He ran a pretty tight ship in that regard, and worked very hard at it. So they did pretty good. I was very much impressed. Old Bart did really good. So considering the tempo that she had actually had like a large conference type thing activity, and she was able to promote it to hundreds of people in one hit. That's why she came out of nowhere so fast. So then basically she started hitting her family, her friends and all that, but you can only go so far with that. So Bart worked on his much wider network in a sense that he has through YouTube and other platforms and other ways. And so, and different people offered to help in different ways, which was good. So he eventually got there. So, I was a bit worried in the end when he said, because I'd actually said to him, do you want me to try and access more people and all that? And he goes, no, I think I'm fine. I think I've got it. I said, are you sure? And I was actually a bit worried. I'm going, oh, God, like the last minute somebody comes up with and just aces you right at the end. And I was worried about something like that. And I'm going, oh, God. And then he sent me the video clip, and I knew he's got it, because he wouldn't have done that. He would have basically, had his little depression episode and sort of not talk to anyone for a couple of days and then sort of come back. So I know what he's like. So when he actually immediately responded, I knew, you've won it, haven't you? And he said, here's a link to the Zoom thing. So I watched the Zoom thing as it was the live sort of Zoom thing. It's not accessible anymore because it was just a live thing. So it was a link. Unless you record it, you can't see it after the fact. So yeah, the funny thing, in the end, they basically, because they were so close, the two of them, they did so well, they also gave her the people that are, that run the company, they decided to basically give her as well the holiday. So she got a holiday out of it as well, even coming in second. So that was nice of them, because they'd really worked compared to the next best person was about a third of what they had achieved. So, they'd really pushed up the numbers. They'd done incredibly impressively well in that regard. So yeah, so he was happy, but I think he's just exhausted. That's why he's sort of, you won't see him for a couple of days. He's just exhausted. He's just had it. He's knackered. I don't blame him. Mentally and physically, he was just sort of at that. Yes. And you know how he gets, when he gets competitive, he goes manic. So yeah, I'm glad he won. I'm really happy for him. Okay, what kind of clean products does your partner use? Makeup, foundation, and blah regular. There's a lot of traditional stuff, Indonesian stuff you can actually get, which doesn't have any crap in it at all. It's just basically of plant compounds and stuff like that. I usually, when I do visit Indonesia, I pick up a whole bunch of load of stuff and I bring it back. So there's all sorts of like creams and stuff like that, which are traditional. You can't go to the regular stores to get them. So you got to go to the stores which are, the old grandmothers and the older people and people like that are creating less of the commercial stuff. So it's not packaged in the same way commercial stuff is. So it's really basic the way it is. Sometimes it's, in little sort of metal containers or little wooden the bamboo type things, and sometimes in glass things. It's a very basic. It's not the traditional commercial stuff out there, So really, anything that you buy in the supermarket basically is going to be crap. It's all comes out of the industrial zone, which is called Surabaya, which is their big industrial center, the manufacturing center, the main manufacturing center of Indonesia. So I wouldn't bother with any of that sort of stuff. It's crap. And so if you're looking in certain places, probably the best country to try and access some of these traditional things, they are a bit more pricier, would be basically places like Singapore and Malaysia to some extent. There's probably a few sites in Thailand as well. I'm actually asked my mate's partner, her name's Mem. She comes from Thailand. Before she goes, I'm actually next week I may just ask her whether she knows of an actual website where they send traditional stuff over. Because I don't think some of the places that we go in Indonesia are actually on the web at all, so you can access them. You have to sort of like be either on holidays there or have some local person that knows how to access this stuff directly. Because even when they give you their cards, it's just their phone number on. I've never seen a website. I mean, maybe now they do have websites. I don't know. I'll try and find out. Fappers is non-discriminatory. If it's got a pulse, he'll go after it. It's like one of my mates says, I like the ones with the love handles. I can hold on to them. I just shake my head. I leave it at that. Oh. Yes, and it's getting worse. You're an animal says, I see many large women in public, and it's getting damn worse. And if we go full kibble culture, where people are basically combining shitloads of seed oil and shitloads of sugar, like all these fake meats and all this fake stuff that's around that a lot of the vegans are jumping on. If you take a look, some of the newer vegans are actually starting to get quite fat. See, the old traditional vegan diet, which, was low fat, high sugar, but, like fruit and stuff like that, tended to be very catabolic, very low in protein. So it was very catabolic. But the new people now are sort of what I call the junk food vegan generation. They are basically into all these fake meats and fake products and all that. And you can see that they're actually putting on weight, quite a lot of them, because they're engaging the Randall cycle, something that they do not understand. You can basically engage the Randall cycle even in, if you were to basically take lactose, like get rid of all the fat, get rid of all the protein, just have a big concentration of lactose. It's an animal product. So it's an animal sugar, which won't turn into fructose. It's basically, even galactose turns into glucose through a number of enzymatic pathways, 4 enzymatic pathways. But at the end of the day, you will basically be giving yourself a big load of glucose together with a big dose of fat from animals. It's still animal products. It still could be considered carnivore, but you can still engage the Randle cycle as a consequence. Now, obviously, none of us go out and buy pure lactose. None of us do that unless there's something weird about you, but nobody does that. So technically speaking, if you're just having a bit of milk now and then, not going to be an issue. There's not enough carbs in it to engage the Randle cycle. But these people basically are now eating processed food, no different than the sad dieters out there that are eating processed garbage. They may include a bit of meat in it, but it's still processed garbage full of seed oils and sugar. The difference between the vegan version and their standard diet of most unhealthy people is basically one's got a bit of animal product and a bit, and the word is a bit because the majority of it is refined crap, and the other basically has none. But at the end of the day, both will engage the Randle cycle, and both are very toxic in terms of deuterium, in terms of anti-nutrients, in terms of a whole lot of things, aldehydes, advanced glycation end products, the different categories of oxidated fats. It's just basically a cocktail of basically poison to the body. And unfortunately, this is the stuff that's being promoted. You're not getting traditional veganism that's being promoted by the food industry. You're getting this crap that is being promoted. Here's Jared. Hello, Jared.
Hey, Harry.
Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you too.
Yeah, just talking about the modern food environment that we all find ourselves in. All the beautiful and wonderful foods that people love to eat. The modern
So you mean sugar and refined carbs, seed oil,
yes.
sugar?
Nothing like it.
Maybe
nothing
with
like
some sugar on top.
Oh, yes, and a cherry on top of that. You have a bit of fructose. You got to add a bit of fructose. Don't neglect the fructose, guys.
Yes.
And if you're one of those strange carnivores, add 100 grams
100
of
grams.
sugar.
I only eat sugar in increments of 100 grams.
Exactly. That's all you should do, and it should be, it should look like honey or mimic honey or anything that mimics honey, which is 100 grams is perfect for you.
Yeah, if I get a half kilo jar of honey, I can't eat less than a fifth of it at a time.
Well, you shouldn't. You should eat more. What's wrong with you? Salad Boy's going to basically, call you out as not being a true honey carny.
I'm a little bit dark.
That actually sounds quite sexual.
Honey carny.
Only my sick mind would go to that.
Maybe if I actually turn around, so you can see.
I'm surprised Blinky didn't throw a remark like that, because he's even sicker than me.
That's a little better.
I know where that's coming from. No, I don't do anal sunbaking. I do have I draw the line there.
Butthole sunning. You mean after all of that information that Sky shared with you so graciously, you're not going to take her up on?
That girl is dangerous. You should know that. You got to be very careful. I got a recent email asking me for assistance with certain information she wanted. So it's part of a some new things that she's doing. So I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. So I sent her some of the information. She said, "Do you want to get involved?" And I said, "I didn't reply."
There, is there a market for streaming butthole sunning?
Oh, there probably is on OnlyFans. It'll probably come about. Look, these are a few small amount of people that actually have started this movement. Another one of those alternative, crackpot movements. But don't be surprised if more of the vegans on OnlyFans, the OnlyFans vegans, actually take it up as well. It's going to be hilarious. How crazy can these people become?
So, do you just turn your camera upside down and show your face while you're butthole sunning, or do you actually have a camera on your butthole for people to watch it burn in real time?
I don't know. Maybe they set it up with a tripod a bit further away so they can get a good angle.
Yeah, there you go.
You got to do
maybe
it.
Maybe it's a multi-camera setup.
Could be.
You don't have to. You don't have to choose.
Could actually be. A really proper show. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it professionally.
When your best side is your backside, you need to innovate.
Yes. Well, there you go. It's 40. It's Blinky's probably doing it already. He's a connoisseur.
34 degrees. It was 3 degrees Celsius here today.
He's one of
I got a sunburn.
Blinky's one of Sky's proteges, so he loves being put out and experimented on. Don't you, Blinky?
Okay. So is Blinker's butthole sunning then?
Oh, I bet he is. He's probably out there all. Because look at the comment. We have further up here, we're talking about buttholes, and just further down, Blinky tells us, "Oh, it's 34C here today. I'm taking advantage of it."
Sounds like prime butthole weather.
Exactly. Why would you neglect the weather? We're talking about blinkers here. Actually, I call him Blinky. Sky calls him Blinkers. Oh, how cute. Yes, very funny. He's uncontrollable. He hasn't responded. What does he do? He's probably gone away. But I'm not. Yep, he's lost for words.
Oh yes, that trip that Bart won.
Yeah.
Wonder if he'll get to go.
Don't know.
He's entitled to it, the sounds of it, but...
he definitely didn't make any statement on the actual at the Zoom thing. So he basically, you got to be. You're not on YouTube. You got a whole lot of other people. You got to keep it, professional in that regard. But at the end of the day, I don't know. Look, currently, we don't have any enforcement of, because there's a whole lot of human rights things. You can't really enforce these sort of corona passports, as people are saying. I mean, I know some companies are trying to push that line, but generally speaking, I don't think that it's enforceable. This is Lukey's take. Help! I need a doctor here. I'm a doctor. What is going on? He's having a heart attack. I'm a vegan doctor. He's dying. Oh. I will be going. Only animal abusers get heart attacks. Yes, yes, yes. It's not probably too far from the truth, this thinking. You know, a lot of doctors, if you ask them, even current carnivore and low carb doctors, if you ask them how they felt when they saw people who were obese or people who were sick or whatever when they turned up, they always thought it was their fault. They weren't doing it right.
Mm.
There was that underlying thing. If you only tried harder, you probably wouldn't be in this mess. But they can't say it. They still have to help you. But there is a bit of truth in all that. You know, it's not completely not the case. It's when doctors get an opportunity to look into these things, they realize, oh, not exactly as Harry. There are claims retinol cream is anti-aging. Look, retinol from liver, from all these other things is a good thing because it regulates collagen-degrading enzymes, and it's really good for the skin, for different parts of the body and all that. But I wouldn't go as far as saying these creams are necessarily, because a lot of these creams have a lot of other components in them that can be problematic to the skin and to the body in general being absorbed. So, and they're expensive. Why would you waste your time? So if you're gonna basically things like retinol, vitamin D, all the fat soluble vitamins, basically MK4, and in particular 1B vitamin, which is niacin, B3, all those basically have positive effects for the skin. And a few other, and sulfur plays a big role as well. So sulfur amino acids like taurine, or a supplemental like MSM also have beneficial effects. Problem with a lot of these creams, what they claim, there is probably one ingredient in there, the retinol, that they can claim some importance. But if you're eating a lot of garbage and you're putting a lot of garbage in your body, you're probably not even keeping up with the damage for that little bit of retinol, expensive retinol that's in the cream to really do much for you. So I think retinol in general has been shown in studies to basically be beneficial for the skin. But, you know, if you're like overloading, I mean, there's a lot of things that are beneficial to the body. But if I was to take cyanide with it, I'm going to kill myself. It's not going to do much for me. And that's the problem that a lot of people don't understand, that it's the diet plays the biggest role, not these creams. And you can get more of this into your body from eating, you know, animal foods, animal fats, than basically worrying about creams. I don't put any creams on my face or body any at all. And even the soaps that I use are very plain. You can get sort of I've still got a bit of the Greek stuff that I got last time from a, you know, but I don't have a lot. It's pretty hard to get, but it's like a solid block. It's just made from olive oil and ash and a number of other things that are in it. That basically is the way traditionally they made it. I've got some stuff that I get with plant sort of flavors in it, so which are like animal fats and stuff like that, and a number of others that are combinations, and they're far better. Yes, a lot of this sort of stuff, people pay too much money, as far as I'm concerned. There's probably some good compounds in some of it. I mean, Cerule has one product there that's probably pretty good in terms of they've actually got some of the compound of the stem cell enhancing in the cream, and that's that should be fairly, you know, fairly good for the dermis, far better than some of this stuff. The other cleanser that, you know, everybody got, which is a $30 cleanser, that's just a standard cleanser. Their product's probably cleaner than the others, but it's just a standard cleanser, more for people that, you know, like women that put makeup on and stuff like that, and they want to take it off and clean their face from all the stuff, all the chemicals that they've just put on their face. It's more for them. You know, so yeah, in that regard.
Animal fats. Animal fats also on your skin as cream are just great.
Yep, exactly.
I might have to put some lard on my chest and stomach. We'll see.
Well, people in the past you would get animal fats and even like, you know about Cleopatra using milk baths, and a whole lot of other people that use different animal compounds to sort of utilize, and a lot of the sort of antimicrobial properties, like it's not in the honey, it's actually in the beeswax. The beeswax is the stuff that actually has the antimicrobial properties. You get a bit in the honey, but it's primarily the beeswax. So what the Hudzer people are doing by eating that, they get very little sugar or fructose, but they get, and let alone probably the little that they get is a blip in the ocean of their glycogen requirements for all their physical activities that they do. Plus, a lot of it is basically fats and a whole lot of other compounds that are secreted from the bees that have got these antimicrobial properties to prevent other organisms getting into their food source, in a sense. So that's where it's really coming from. So beeswax, I actually got a good study, but anyway, I'll leave that for the later stream if it comes up to be put on and explained and discussed. But yeah, so what they're doing is very different than basically eating 100 grams of sugar, or because most honey in around the world is basically they will clear it out because people don't like all the roughage. Let's put it that way. Westerners basically like their honey nice and clean without any of the roughage, the good stuff actually. And so what they're having is all it's the stuff in the waxy material. And so that's what they're getting. They're not getting the best part, they're getting the worst part of the product.
So you're saying you should eat like full honeycomb instead of honey?
Yeah, that's far better. But I don't see it as a necessity, let alone there are not enough bees around the place to be able to provide sufficient honey comb to every person anyway. It's just it's a ridiculous proposition to even consider something like that. But these populations, remember, they're having very little. They just go around, they go past a lot of beehives, and it's because they probably wouldn't have even bothered even going for that, because it's a lot of trouble having to light a fire, going there, trying to get rid of all the bees, out of the actual, and then trying to access that honey and all that. There's a lot involved for very little nutritional value, and they know it, compared to hitting an animal and taking it back to the. But if you've got tourists that turn up and say, promoting that line and wanting to basically see that. And it was interesting that, as Mary said last time, they walked past so many beehives, but it's only when they asked them that they basically stopped and actually got them some. And even then, they cut it up in small pieces and gave each person, so everybody had a small piece, hardly any honey at all in it. And the majority of what they're eating is basically this waxy, fatty material, which has also got some beneficial antimicrobial elements to it. And I can understand these people would use it more for those sort of purposes, for cuts, for antiseptics, for antimicrobial purposes, rather than as a food, to go to all that trouble of taking on the bees. It's not as if these people are going in bare skin and everything. It's not like somebody that is in a beehive, that actually runs a beehive now, puts a whole bodysuit on, covers completely, and is fully protected. These people are completely unprotected. So it's something that you would do on a rare occasion, I would think. It's not something that you would do on a regular. And they probably pick the time of the day as well, which is less risky because probably more bees away from the actual hive. And they would know this sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's a lot of this is so just nonsensical, confounded, but, people make their name on these things and then they just don't want to admit that they got it wrong. We know who we're talking about, don't we?
Again, I can't even imagine eating honey in increments smaller than 100 grams. If you can't eat 100 grams, you better make it 200 grams.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. You can't, if you're going to go all the way with a Randall cycle, go all the way. Don't go half, I mean, what's wrong with you? You should ask them.
On the carnivore diet. Why?
Because basically she feels left out. Come back to the dark side, Raminkler. Come back to the carbs. I couldn't help myself.
Drunk on chocolate fudge muffins. That's what happens when you drink muffins, Fapnado.
Where have you been? Hiding under a rock? That's it. It's a pizza crust.
Pie crust. Pizza pie crust.
I can see Blinky over there knobbing away at the pizza crust.
He probably eats his pizza crust first, like a freak.
Exactly. Reverse. Butt side first. Oh, yes, exactly. You're right, Shell. Misery loves company.
Yeah, I suppose that is.
It's like ex-smokers. You're right, exactly. I had the same thing when I was giving up smoking with friends that did smoke. And, yeah, do you want to smoke, Harry? Fuck off. Yes. Oh, we don't see you down here anymore. Yes, because I'm not smoking. Because we used to gather out at certain parts of the building at work, and I haven't seen you for ages. That's because I'm not smoking anymore.
You don't want to just go stand around and enjoy their secondhand smoke and the conversation?
No, thanks. Yes, it's there's hardly any now. Our building, a lot of the people are sort of retired, and it's very hard to. There's only a couple that go out. It's really hard to basically smoke because there are so many restrictions on smoking. Like even in the CBD now, it's actually in Hobart, it's sort of semi illegal by the council. So they put up different signs, so you see far less. Come to where I'm in North Hobart, where it's not, and you get a lot of people, more smokers up here accumulated as I walk past in the evening heading home. So again, because of that restriction in the CBD. Two questions. Would raw colostrum from cows help heal an injury? Does the Randall cycle apply to all mammals? Yes, it does. Am I thinking kibble would engage the Randall cycle in dogs and cats? Definitely. far faster than even us, because they don't have a lot of the mechanisms to deal with sugar as effective as we do.
So probably it's worse in cats than dogs.
That's true.
Because dogs have some ability to metabolize carbohydrate.
Some amylase. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, cats are pretty much, yeah. And even cats have no adaptation to even cooked meat. So, when it comes to, it should be animal foods that are uncooked for cats. So that needs to be quite clear. And dogs can tolerate a small amount of carbs, not a lot, but a small amount.
Right.
It's not even ideal for them. It's just basically they can tolerate a bit.
Right. Yeah, dogs can also do keto diet, which is kind of interesting. I don't think it's optimal for them necessarily, but there are people that feed their dogs lots and lots of fat, whereas a cat, you'll just end up with really smelly poops.
Basically, yeah. Well, yeah, they are more into, they like the chimps more. There's far more support of their glycolytic pathways rather than, so they're not as fat. They're very nearly impossible to get them fat adapted in that regard. A bit like the other things are rodents. It's extremely hard to get a rodent into ketosis as well. So, certain animals more than others. So it depends on the animal. But yes, dogs is much easier. Even wolves, much easier. And I think that's where they got that element anyway from the first place.
So as for the first part of the questions, would raw colostrum help heal an injury? And my answer would be yes.
It would help.
It's just going to give a really potent dose of nutrients. Basically, it's exceptionally nutrient dense as a food, to the point that it's like orange,
and it's got seven times
instead of like a cream color, and it's basically just the same nutrients as in milk, just hyper concentrated.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got 7 times the lactoferrin, so it's very healing, and it's a potent. It's expensive. That's the only problem. It's a potent anti-lectin inhibitor. So as well, and usually a lot of people that do have gut issues is because of exposure to higher levels of lectins, as well, with other things as well. It's not only lectins; there's other things as well that are assaulting the gut, but it's one factor. And lactoferrin both helps in that and helps in dealing with a number of other things as well. So it's good stuff. But
yeah, if you have access to raw colostrum, I would say just try some.
Yeah. If you can get it at a good price, even better from a farmer. So yeah, it's nothing like first milk. Even human first milk is really potent. Yes, men, leave that to your baby, not to yourself. Anyway, what's your opinion on bore water, Harry? As you know, I have it here, and mine is clean.
Okay, so for those in North America watching, bore water is well water. It's the same thing.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, we need to say that. Yeah, you're correct. Correct. Bore water is well water.
They call it well water here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Basically, when it comes to bore water, it depends on also the water table, and also it depends on where are you located exactly in Western Australia, Blinky? Where exactly? Because there are different mineral concentrations in different parts of the world, and that can affect also the trace mineral composition of water in those different well bore sources. What's it like in Canada, where you're from, in terms of the mineralization or the trace minerals and the sort of is it better than other parts of the world, or?
I'm not sure how it compares to other parts of the world, but
Okay.
I've been on well water basically my whole life. My mom's property was outside of the city water access actually when I was growing up, so she was on a well, and now that she's within the water access, the water main's been run past her house. She's actually one of like 3 properties in the city that are grandfathered that are allowed to have a well on the property.
Yeah, look, yeah, it's going to be variations. It's always a good idea to basically Yoken. Where is that located? Let me just see quickly. It's a city in Western Australia. It's a suburb of Port. So it's an outer suburb of Perth. You got well water, bore water. Interesting. I don't know what the mineral composition of that of the soil there is. I do know of other places like Kalgoorlie and other places around, but I don't know about that location, so I can't really tell you. Check with the department that actually administers water. They should have information to be able to tell you, give you a bit of an insight into the quality of that water, the composition, the minerals.
Usually there's municipalities will offer water testing for free as well.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Or you pay for like a kit to send the water, but the actual analysis is free.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
In terms of drinking well water, though, like my take would be that it's, assuming you don't have heavy metal or something crazy in it.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's, I would way prefer to drink well water than city water of just about any variety. And even if it requires, a water softener or a treatment of some kind as a home system to reduce the mineral content in it, if it has too much, I would rather that than trying to filter out, fluoride and chlorine and chloride and who knows what pharmaceutical trace elements are there from recycled human waste and things like this.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of those sort of issues that with municipal water in different parts of the world. I think the US is much worse in some states than others. Depends. So different parts of the world are worse than others. So it's hard to say unless you know the place and you've researched it. Because a lot of us just research our own locality, like you would have, Jared, like I have, and in that regard. So it's hard to talk about. But yeah, I'm not sure about Perth because you're in Perth, one of the northern parts of Perth, close to a reserve. So it's a more outer area. So I'm not sure. I know that other parts of Western Australia have a lot of heavy metals in their water because there's a lot of mining in those areas, and the concentration of certain minerals is much higher. So there's an issue there. There's also contamination of water in some of those areas, which can be a very big problem due to mining as well. So there's a whole lot of compounding issues. So that's a hard one. And as I've said always, you need to basically try and contact your municipal, or in Australia we would call it a council, your council, local government council, and get them to provide you with either information, which they may have done, like council officers may have been sent out to different locales to do like samplings. Sometimes there's also sampling that's done by EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of different states in Australia, and different equivalent organisations in other parts of the world. So yeah, and some of their websites you can find out and get some of that information, find out exactly what's the issue with the water, and that's So Shell's talking about water softener as Peter. We have both well and city. We can switch back and forward. Gives you an option to basically be able to put the city stuff through the washing machine in some cases, because so it doesn't die. That's a big problem with some of the well water can be
Yeah,
quite
the mineral
heavy.
buildup
Yeah,
can be
yeah, the mineral buildup in the machines can
hard
actually
water.
cause the hard water sort of thing. So that can be a problem. But otherwise, yeah. She's mentioned a water softener, PITA, PITA. Have you heard of that?
Haven't, no.
Okay. I don't know enough about it to be able to comment.
The city water here tastes like a pool. It's crazy to me that anybody would drink it unfiltered, even with at least run it through a charcoal filter or something to take the smell off of it. Like it's
bad.
It's oh yeah, it's gross. It's gross. It especially if it's in like a tall glass. It's not so noticeable while it's cold, of course, but if it gets to room temperature and there's like air trapped in the glass with the water, so you can smell it. It smells like the chlorine in it is palpable.
Gold. Yeah, our water comes from. We've got actual around above the sort of Mount Wellington sort of area. It's basically in catchments, and it's all freshwater catchments. So it's really it just tastes like, and luckily they don't put a lot of they don't over chemicalize it, so to speak, as a consequence because of that. And there's also a lot of alternatives down here. We've had a stronger, like in Tasmania, probably is the only state that's got a strong green movement in the state in politics. And so they tend to sort of restrict, they dominate our city council to a large extent. And so they tend to dominate and reduce that sort of stuff, how much gets into the water. So this water is fairly good. It doesn't taste foul, funny or strange. I can go up to the sort of mountain and actually taste the same similar water nearly. That's fairly good. That's
good. Shell says PITA is just pain in the ass. She just means a pain in the ass water softener.
Okay. Fair enough. It's an acronym.
In which case, I have heard of that technology. Yes.
Yes, me too. So, is 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate a day enough? I take it an hours before bed, but I feel like I'm not getting enough magnesium. You're not getting enough sodium. That's your problem. That's why you probably got either restless legs or basically discomfort in your legs. I don't actually supplement magnesium at all. Zero supplementation. So you get an excretion rate of 120 milligrams per day. The only time I actually supplement is when I do long fasts. That's the only time to cover the excretion rate that I lose. And I don't actually put too much because I do want to maintain some level of uncoupling of the mitochondria so I can lose more weight. That means thermogenically get rid of more stuff, energy. You don't want too much uncoupling, but a bit actually helps. And our ancestors, you actually impede the positive effects of a fast by taking too much magnesium, because you're supposed to uncouple your mitochondria to a certain degree when you fast. Something that people don't realize. It's a natural process. You should not be inhibiting it with too much magnesium. So I just take a small trace level of magnesium. And then when I get back into food again, then I actually just take some additional supplemental, but small amounts, about 100 for a couple of days, 100 milligrams or 150 around there. And after that, I'm fine. A couple of days after, that's all I take. Well, I don't even feel anything, so I don't know how fine I am. It's just basically covering, both bases in a sense. The thing that I've noticed, you can take as much magnesium. I did that experiment a while back, and I still had basically, sore legs and stuff like that, and cramps and stuff like that. Once I upped my sodium, it eliminated all the problem. It's usually a sodium deficiency than a magnesium one. So if you're eating a carnivore diet, you're getting more than 120 milligrams per day. Believe me, I've shown it before. Go and check my video that I did on magnesium. People just are crazy about, as if all these tribal societies had supplemental magnesium around to use constantly. The thing that
magnesium
they do,
mineral licks.
exactly. What actually depletes magnesium? Sugar. Let me say that again. What depletes magnesium? Sugar. You need more magnesium, double the magnesium that you would need if you're not consuming sugar. What basically makes you thirsty? Sugar. You only produce 0.44 metabolic water. You lose more. You dehydrate on sugar.
Mm.
That's why the body tries to keep so much. That's why insulin rises and is trying to keep conserve water and all that. And that's what rises blood pressure slightly as a consequence. It's trying to conserve that sort of stuff. And that's why you're constantly drinking when you're on sugar. When you're not on sugar, you don't feel thirsty. I get up in the morning, like when I go for my long walk, I don't even have any water whatsoever. And I'm, probably hydrate after my exercise.
Yep.
Walking for hours and then coming back because I'm hydrating with my fat because I'm fat adapted. That's what I'm doing. It's only people that feel that have this urge for water, thirst for water, is because they are dehydrating with sugar. When you don't dehydrate, you don't get hungry and you don't get thirsty like other people. And then you can actually notice your own signaling. I know when I'm thirsty. I know when I'm hungry. You're going to say?
Oh, just the only time I drink water is if I've been sweating a lot, and then it's salt water. And so basically in the sauna, I'll have probably a liter of water, maybe more. And then if I've been outside on a hot day or something like that, then yeah, water sometimes is nice, but I'm rarely thirsty for water. I drink a little bit of coffee in the mornings and sometimes some tea at night, I guess. And when I'm thirsty, I go for a glass of milk usually.
Best thing.
I'm hardly ever craving water. It's just not satisfying at all.
Yeah, exactly. And people didn't. You go back, people didn't have this obsession with water, drinking water constantly. It's just basically the highly refined carbohydrates that are dehydrating us. That's where the problem is coming from. When you eliminate the high refined, dehydrating carbohydrates, and also there's a fear of salt still in our population, even in our community, we still have a big fear of salt.
Yeah,
and
salt causes hypertension, Harry. Don't you know?
Yes, exactly. But without enough salt, we can't hold on to water, and we dehydrate much more rapidly. And it's only an issue when you've got high insulin. The high insulin is the damn thing that actually holds on to both water and sodium for dear life. And that's, and let alone it depletes a lot of potassium and magnesium, high carbohydrate diets. Low carbohydrate diets require less magnesium and less potassium. It's the reason why we don't get these issues. We only get these issues when you're on a low carbohydrate diet and you avoid salt. All populations, remember what Mary was talking about, even in one of her recent things, all these other populations seek out salt, bar the Maasai. Any blood consuming tribal culture does not pursue salt because they're getting it in shitloads of amounts from the blood. So why would you? And it's a very highly concentrated form from the blood. And that's the reason why you don't need to, you're probably getting, because the blood's got a very high concentration in animals, and it's probably the reason why you don't really want to put any more salt, because you're already getting plenty from the blood. So yeah, that's the reason why they don't need it.
So to answer the question, 400 milligrams, yes, that should be plenty of magnesium. Probably don't even need that.
Yeah,
and if you feel you're not getting enough, it's probably a salt issue, not an insufficiency of magnesium.
Exactly. Yes, well put. Collagen is, as long as you've got the fat soluble vitamins, yep, your body will uptake that. But if you don't, but at the same time, the body's like a Swiss Army knife. If you've got the essential amino acids, it can create whatever it needs. Body can produce its own glycine if it wants to. It can produce anything that it likes, as long as it's got the essential amino acids. And the majority of animal food, well, practically all animal foods, have all the essential amino acids. So even milk, dairy has all the essential amino acids. Eggs have all the essential amino acids. Every single, whether it's a fish or a land animal, has all the essential amino acids. So it's only plants that don't, and in higher bioavailable form. So the body then just enzymatically. The only difference is if you consume connective tissue or collagen-rich tissue or stuff like that, what it means is the body has to do less enzymatic conversions. But at the same time, it still can't use it properly if it doesn't have all the other cofactors. What are the cofactors for all those enzymes that are involved in collagen degrading and regulation of collagen? Retinol. So if you don't have the retinol, you don't have the MK4, you don't have all these things in there, well, so if you just take a powdered collagen, lean meat, and you have none of the fat-soluble vitamins from real fat from animals, well, you're not going to get basically the sort of stuff that the cofactors that are required for those enzymatic processes to work properly. And that's the problem, So, yes, while it's it's a source that you can use, at the end of the day, you still need the enzymes to regulate and utilize it and incorporate it into the tissue. So you still need the fat-soluble vitamins as cofactors, as regulators for those for those enzymes that are involved in synthesizing and laying down collagen in the right way. Because if you don't have enough, you can actually get these like spurs of bone. You can get all sorts of things. You can get like these sort of malformations on the skin, where the skin gets thicker in certain place or thinner in certain place or whatever. And that's again because those enzymes are not being regulated properly and not being directed to do their job properly and heal and fix tissue properly. You do need the micronutrients. This is why we say that you can actually disengage the Randall cycle on a vegan diet, which is basically like the sort of traditional one that which is very catabolic, but at the end of the day, it's very poor in micronutrients. So your body's going to slowly fall apart, which is what happens. Yes, you get thinner when you're doing a traditional vegan diet, not all this junk food vegan diets that are currently being done by a lot of people, but the traditional vegan diet is very catabolic and your tissue will break down.
Yeah, your body's just crying for resources.
Exactly, yeah. And there's not enough micronutrients in that food to support all these enzymatic pathways, and let alone you actually need more, because when it comes to meat, it's so already it's easy to combine, to incorporate those amino acids that have come directly from the meat in a composition which is equivalent to the composition your own tissue is structured as. If you look at an animal's muscle, it's very similar to human muscle. Yes, it's structured slightly differently, but in terms of the material that it's made up of is very similar. So if you eat that, it's much easier for the body to utilize, require less enzymatic support, even though you're giving it more micronutrients. It makes it a much easier and effortless job to basically do all this sort of stuff. Obviously, if you basically incorporate I think it's a good thing to eat pork and pork fat and all that. Why? Because it's much richer in all these collagen type amino acids, and also it's much lower in deuterium. So a lot of the collagen powders are very high in deuterium. So we don't want that. We want low deuterium
I'm pretty
sources.
skeptical of collagen powders as nutritional supplements, as like compared to just getting collagen from bone broth or connective tissues
Exactly.
or whatever. Collagen powder is usually hydrolyzed, and that has to change it.
Yeah, we haven't done experiments. That's the thing. We haven't really done experiments. Now, even if it's hydrolyzed like that and all that, when you actually get it into the body, if you've got a good acidic stomach, you will basically denature everything. All proteins are denatured down to amino acids, basic amino acids. So that's not so much the issue. It's the refinement process that tends to build up the actual amount of, this other type of hydrogen isotope. It's the manufacturing process. It's actually manufacturing that actually causes an increase in these other types of hydrogens incorporated into the structures of the different amino acids, fatty acids, and everything else. That's what happens. It's just the way it's actually manufactured that actually tend to incorporate. You've got the carbon sort of skeleton, you've got all these hydrogens that are stuck on. You end up getting more of the deuterium type of hydrogen stuck on there, and that's where the problem. And that is a manufacturing thing. And people say maybe in the future they may be able to develop a manufacturing process that can actually eliminate that or reduce the amount of that.
Sure.
Currently, we don't have that method. Maybe, yes, that could be happen in the future. But the current ways we do it to keep it within that cost structure means that it's done in that more basic way, which pretty much means that it will have high deuterium levels, simple as that. So, and it's more expensive. I mean, you buy some of these, you're paying an arm and a leg for some of these collagen powders. They're so expensive. When you can go to your butcher and say, just, cut me off a whole lot of fat and skins, a whole lot of pig skins, and I'll take that. It's cheap as chips and basically costs next to nothing, and it's exactly the way you should be eating it from that animal. You can sort of lay it in your, on a tray in your oven, put it in, bake it slightly, and then have a whole lot of, pork crackle, or have basically, incorporated, like put it through a mincing type thing and incorporate it into mince meats. Mm-hmm. You can basically dry it out and use it in soups. There's so many ways you can, and then sort of break it down into small parts using like a blender. Yes, I know, a vegan blender. You might as well use it for something. And so if you dry it out and then use it and break it up, then you can actually use it as a pork powder in a soup. So there's a lot of things you can actually do with this sort of stuff, and it's cheap, guys. It's so cheap going to a butcher and getting this stuff. They throw it away. They cut it off and throw it away in many regards, because people just don't want to eat it. It's too hard, or it's too, or too much fat, or whatever. And these people are throwing a lot of this away, and they would give you a whole bag full for a couple of bucks in many cases, just for the trouble, for taking it away so they don't have to dispose it themselves. If you make an arrangement, say, can I come around here every Friday? What time do you want me to come around and just pick up a whole bag of all your cuttings, trimmings off your pork fat and, or fats from other animal sources or stuff? I'll give it to you. They will cut it off, trim it off, and give it to you, hand it over, both fats and pig's skin and stuff like that, because most people don't want it. You go to a supermarket and you see all these awful, lean, trimmed off, pork, chops, or pork steaks that have got no connective tissue and no, it's just basically a very little white piece at the outer perimeter where the fat was that's been cut off completely and thrown away, and you basically, it's just a lean piece of meat that you're actually buying. It's damn awful, that sort of stuff. And
it's not satisfying as a meal.
No.
You have to eat so much butter with a lean cut of meat for it to be
exactly.
appetizing, as compared to if it just had the natural fat that should be there.
Precisely. I mean, I like to get my pork chops with really big piece of fat like that.
Me too. I like it untrimmed, if possible.
But sometimes some areas you have to go to a butcher. So yeah, they're absolute great source in that regard, and so I don't think we really need to worry about. I think we've covered water quite a bit. We don't really need to really worry about buying supplements and stuff like that. We waste a lot of money on supplements. I used to do it as well. I think Jared has done it in the past and buying protein powders, and I used to buy protein powders and collagen powders and all this sort of stuff.
Not protein powder personally, but yeah, I used to buy collagen powder.
No, I used to buy protein powder as well, like whey whey and casein powders and stuff like that. So yeah, I used to buy a lot of that sort of stuff. Even stuff with like chocolate flavored ones and all sorts of. I know, it's just back in those days we just didn't think. We just thought, oh, this looks good. Oh, it's chocolate flavored, fantastic. So because we still had some of the carb addiction sort of thinking, so we just bought that crap. Sort of, God, the amount of nonsense that's out there is just incredible. There's Loki. G'day, Loki.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay this time.
Hey, Luke.
Hey.
You busy working?
Yeah, I'm a bit busy, but unexpectedly, a close friend asked me for some time so we could talk, and it ended up going way longer than I expected.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. So getting me sent. No, too far that way.
I'm sandwiched.
Yeah, we're sandwiched, so we can all be sent at the same size, and I can put things up without actually. Oh, we're still covered slightly. Let me just see. Does that make it? Nah, not that one.
You can leave it with the 3 bars. I can just tilt my camera down and get my face higher in the frame if people are bothered by it being covered by the comment.
It doesn't matter. Bad luck.
This should work. Yeah, this
Luke
is
and I are visible, and then Harry's just eyes.
Oh God.
Blinky would have loved that. That would have excited the hell out of him.
The background radiation thing is nonsense. Dendritic structure itself violates the model being used to espouse that idea. These dendritic filaments are actively powered with electricity. What is he talking about?
It's that electromagnetic sort of other theory. It's that one's nonsense, mate. Not the
the electric universe stuff.
Electric universe. It's nonsense. Yeah, it is nonsense. Bart's covered that. You're an animal. It is nonsense, mate. And the microwave background radiation has actually been measured. We know it exists and all that. And what I was talking in terms of the measurements they've made with the improvements in parallax techniques and other things, and the new satellites that they've put up to get better measurements for distant galaxies, whether they can actually then those measurements confirm some of the observations that they've got from the microwave background radiation, and sort of make better sense in working out how old the universe is and how fast certain things and the way they're actually moving, and having a better understanding of some of these sort of things that we've incorporated, like dark matter, dark energy, and all that, in order to work out some of the, whether one is valid or not, or trying to tease out what may be these forces. There may be something different. and all that, so they have a more deeper understanding. But it's all still preliminary in early stages, where the string theory and all these other theories have sort of unraveled completely, in a sense, which is a good thing. And we're going back to good empirical science of good observation and good measurements to try and work out what is really happening. So this is a good thing that's actually happened in science, because it gives us an opportunity to come up with some new solutions and new ways of looking. We still have an incomplete picture, but to say that the micro background radiation is nonsense, that's ridiculous. We've measured it. People all over the world have measured it precisely and mapped it. No. Next you'll be telling me the Earth is flat. Anyway.
Sounds like a stew recipe.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I'm taking notes.
Some people with their own traditional cooking. What was that? Yes, don't forget in the soup, if you're going to beat an egg, bring it to the same temperature, the egg with the soup, and then incorporate it. It incorporates much smoother. That's a trick that I learned from my younger sister. By slowly putting little tablespoons of water from the soup into the egg that's beaten, and then bringing it to the same temperature, and then incorporating it so it doesn't clump up. So, yes. I have to thank my younger sister for that. The thing that I miss the most is she used to do some really nice pork crackle, so used to supply us with heaps. I occasionally do some things like that on bite mostly. I'm a bit lazy. Actually, a mate of mine's getting an air fryer. He said he wants to try it for some of his meats and other stuff like that, but I reminded him, don't forget to not make sure you don't get a plastic one. We don't want all those xenoestrogens in the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an air fryer for a bit. It was nice while it worked. It stopped working. And they're so often designed that you can't clean them properly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
They smoke like crazy.
If
you're cooking fatty cuts, which I am.
Okay. We actually got one here, me and my friend here in the apartment, and it's been good so far. We even made I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had only pork for Saturday's lunch, like various cuts of pork. It was delicious. Oh, God.
Thanks, Jill.
Are they talking Harry Potter stuff? Is that what that is?
No. The previous one was Shell just
no, but this.
Now further down, I don't know. Oh yeah, they are rose between two thorns. Oh, okay, I don't know. Talk about.
Well, the rose between two thorns. That's me between these two.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I need to swap this around. Well, one of the thorns has gone away. Luke, he just crashed out.
Luke, where'd you go?
He'll be back, hopefully. I usually now and then do bring up a few things about faith, but anyway, I don't go heavily in it because it's more more basically focused on nutrition and stuff like that. My crock pot.
I enjoy talking about that kind of thing, but I understand this is off topic
me too. Me too. I'll touch a bit on it, but I don't go heavily. I just wanted to make sure I cleared up my sort of views on basically traditional Greek Orthodox faith and the way science and faith are viewed within the Greek world, which is slightly different compared to the North American, or I would say new people coming to the faith, let alone I've heard some arrogant things like from some North American Orthodox people that say, oh, those who are born in Orthodoxy aren't as Orthodox or as deeply religious as those people who come into the faith at an older age. You know what I mean? I've heard that as well, which is a bit of like a slap in the face. I disagree with that, with that notion. And that's, you know, I mean, I've met a lot of people, older people in Greece, old grandmothers and all that, that show even more religion, devotion, and piousness than even these people, let alone me. And so I think that's sort of a slap in the face for those people. So I think it's an arrogant thing to say. At the end of the day, our faith is not, we don't externalize our closeness to God and closest to the light. It's something that it's within us to you know, nobody's going to do it for us. We ourselves have to move closer to the light, so to speak, not somebody else telling us to move closer to the light. Mm-hmm. A religious priest is there to basically assist you, because we're always going to have, you know, moments of weakness of faith, or moments where we struggle with things and we need the guidance of others, and that's where they are for moral guidance as a religious leader. But at the end of the day, it's going to be us as people that move closer to the light. It's not going to be basically, you know, something that somebody else can. And I sometimes find that there's a bit of sort of that, like, it's a pushy way. I notice in North America, it seems like a pushy way anyway. But anyway, that's me. It sort of comes across there, and it's sort of like a slap in the face. You guys aren't as true Orthodox as we are. And I'm going, okay, whatever, you know. Faith isn't sort of a polemic of who's more faithful than somebody else. If there's somebody that knows, it's God. It's not, you know, some other human on this planet that knows what my faith is, or what anybody's faith is. I don't even know what their faith is like, really, mm-hmm. or how religiously devoted they are, or how really, you know, in their day-to-day life, they may say something on social media, but how do they live their life? I've met many that have espoused and made and done certain things in front of people in public to sort of demonstrate their religious devotion, but in private, they can be quite nasty people. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, that's not the basis of what you say, but it's what you do, your deeds, your silent deeds before God, not the ones that you basically out there sort of flag waving to the rest of the world. And that's why I don't do any flag waving myself, because I recognize that I can succumb to, you know, to nastiness, and can succumb to evil thoughts and all that, because we're fallen creatures. So, you know, I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal. And when others do that, I sort of go, that says more about you than me. Mm-hmm. or others of my sort. And it's just that a few of them have actually taken a few other Orthodox Christians in specifically Western countries who come from a Protestant tradition and tend to have this sort of black and white sort of approach and thinking, that tend to basically take swipes at people in other parts who are Orthodox elsewhere. And let alone I've heard some of them basically in North America that have been influenced by the Russian Orthodox, in particular, basically take pot shots at the Greek Orthodox people. So it's and I sort of say, that's politics, guys. It's not faith, it's politics. And I know there's political conflict about the supremacy of the different Orthodox patriarchs around. You got the Patriarch of Constantinople, who was considered the first amongst the bishops, in a sense, not above but first. There's a difference. All the actual traditional orthodoxy, all our bishops are independent. Like, there's no one who dominates the others or can speak on behalf of the others in that regard. So that's why there's a holy synod. The whole concept of the word ecclesia, which means sort of a council of the faith, of those who are faithful coming together, a group of people. And it's an ancient Greek word which was used in terms of the people coming together in a sort of like a council, like a democracy. That's where it comes from, the word ecclesia. It's a similar concept. It was taken from that concept. It was the sort of you could say that group of people coming together to basically undertake their religious devotion and also help each other basically be more pious and better Christians, in a sense, is the sort of concept. And that's the whole thing, the thinking that I remember, even when going to sort of like going to church and in Greece and all that, and even the priest talked to us. He basically was like, he was there as a sort of a spiritual leader, but he was basically like one of us, in a sense. The priests are one of us. They're part of the people, part of the community of people. They're not basically separate on a pedestal or different. Many of them are basically just simple people that come from working class or basically farming backgrounds. They're not basically coming from these. We've got theologians that are that go to schools of theologians, the more gifted ones, but the ones that are primarily priests are not theologians, are not sort of the very average people in many cases, coming from average backgrounds. And they're very down to earth. They'll sit in a coffee coffee shop with you and have coffee and chat and talk about football or soccer or whatever, and that's the sort of people that I grew up and all that. People that recognize their own weaknesses as humans. Like one priest, my cousin, first cousin from my dad's side, he in Patra, he works because he hasn't married yet, so he can't become a priest. So it's like an assistant. So he can't be ordained until he marries, and then he ordains and marries Christ. So at that point, I met his the priest of that. This was back in 2006, and we were talking. He said, "Oh, look, I'm going to go and play some cards down at the coffee shop. If you guys are not doing anything, drop in. We'll play a few cards and have a few drinks and stuff like that." Normal people. Most other priests that I see in other parts of the world seem to have this separation from people, and I think that is really what the community of Christ was in the beginning. Simple people getting together and praying, simple people getting together and supporting each other, that's the thing that I like. And when I hear people from other parts of the world that are, show a sort of an insulting, culturally insensitive sort of, things that they say, the first thing I say is, "That's not very Christian of you," is the first thing that I say. And the second thing that I say is, you should look at trying to get yourself to become a better person and be less focused on what other people are doing, or
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's annoying. You guys have probably heard some of the stuff. I usually stay quiet about it because I don't see any value in it, this sort of polemic, because it's usually part of the political establishments in the countries like Russia, you've got the Russian government, or Greece, the Greek government, and stuff like that. And they try to basically utilize their own priesthoods and stuff like that to push them in a certain way. Luckily, our priests are very good in Greece. They sort of ignore the politicians, which is a good thing. They don't listen to the politicians in Greece, and they usually basically every year when the head of the church, who's basically just the Bishop of Athens, he's elected as basically the head of the Holy Synod, which is, it's like a democracy. All the bishops come together and they make decisions about that as equals. They are equals. So like the apostles were equals, they are equals. They're not, one above the other or whatever. There is nobody who's infallible or anything like that. And basically the head of usually the Athens, it's just historical as a legacy of history, because that's the capital of Greece. The person who tends to be the Bishop of Athens also tends to be the spokesperson for the Holy Synod. And pretty much every year when he's, like Easter and Christmas and all that, it's a message of love and peace. You don't hear any other stuff. You don't hear politics coming out of the mouth of this person, any other stuff. You don't see them supporting a specific political party or anything. And they tell their own priests that basically not to basically be involved in, politicizing. If they want to support a party, a political party, that's fine. As I said, even, in my neighborhood, we had a communist priest, so, you can be any political party you want, and even from one person that was a slightly far right from my mother's side of the family, so you can be anything in politics. It's irrelevant as long as you're there for theological purposes, not for political purposes in the church. And so that's one reason why, even with the science and stuff like that, the church in Greece does not take a position on this stuff. And when I see the church interfering in politics, in science and stuff like that in other parts of the world, I say, well, you're treading on areas which you don't know about, and two, you shouldn't be involved, because that's not what you're involved in terms of faith. Mm-hmm. You're blurring the lines of where your responsibility is. Your responsibility is basically helping people to get closer to the light and being a mentor in that regard, and helping them with their own, theological or their own moral sort of struggles. Yep. And you're not there to basically tell them which political party to vote, or, what theory and science to support, or whatever else.
The same is true in reverse when the state starts telling religious groups where and when and how many people can worship. It's a fundamental separation of church and state should be respected, and principle, which means it can't be compromised.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I find in certain parts like Russia and certain parts of the world elsewhere in the Latin world as well, and all that. There is a lot of interference of politicians with the priesthood, and the priesthood with politicians.
Yeah, I was speaking more recently with churches getting shut down for social distancing and under the pandemic.
Yeah, that as well. That as well. That's We've had a number of restrictions, but in Greece there was some priests that basically just ignored it. Some priests, the official position came down eventually that for health reasons we should basically undertake these things, but it wasn't basically they didn't do it for the government in such a way. They just said to their followers, we don't know enough about this. We're not doctors. The doctors are telling us we need to take these precautions, so let's just take them. So they weren't imposing it on them, but they were encouraging people because of what the doctors said. So they were taking an independent position, saying we're not doctors. It's not our role to basically tell you how to cover these health issues, But no churches were closed down in Greece or anything like that. Where in other parts of the world they were.
I feel like it was reasonable for the first few weeks, and then beyond that, it's been quite egregious.
It's a joke. It's basically a joke. You could mitigate it with enough vitamin D. It's a non-issue. It's a respiratory infection, no different. And the average is still around about the 80. yes, some people younger are dying, but they actually die from the flu every year as well, younger people, because they've got comorbidities, they've got other health problems. The reality is, I mean, I don't want to, I never like to, say to people, because a lot of these people are victims of the system that's actually told them to eat kibble and eat this sort of stuff and has made them sick and vulnerable and all that. So what we really need to do is point out this reality. Some of us are doing it. I know that that Sean Baker is doing a bit of a campaign in the US, trying to promote the with politicians over there, that a lot of this nonsense that exists out there, and sort of trying to unwind it. I know Ivor Cummings is doing a lot of good work. Like, he's doing a lot of statistical analysis, showing exactly more. Yeah, really good work. It's been very helpful. I've actually, on like my social media, Facebook and a few other things, I've put up some of Ivor's stuff to say, well, look at this, guys. Take a look at this. Here's real statistics. This is real science. Let's not basically just jump on the crazy bandwagon that everybody else has jumped on. And it's look, the debt levels we're going to leave behind to the next generation and the younger people is just incredible, and the damage, the social damage, the damage to the social fabric. I've seen around the world where people have divorced, people's families have fallen apart because they've lost their jobs. We've got a thing like in Australia where there's a job keeper, job seeker. Some of these policies where they were handing money out to people are coming to an end because the government can't sustain it, and that's understandable. But at the same time, they're still keeping up the sort of restrictions and all that. And I'm going, you can't have it both ways.
It's similar in Canada. There was a whole lot of funding offered, and similar in the UK as well, I think.
Is it being withdrawn as well?
The funding it was made eligible. Primarily, there was a lot of money that was given out for people who were self-employed and not eligible for employment insurance, and which I would fall under because I'm a small business owner. But they've only extended that funding. I think it's to this coming September is as far as it's going. And
well, we've already, because we've been winding it down, so we're going nearly back to zero shortly.
Yeah.
So I think we've already gone. I don't know, because I'm still on the normal sort of pay thing, so I don't have that issue. So I'm not aware, but I've heard out there, a mate of mine told me that this was a couple of weeks ago, said they're winding it down to nothing. It's already nearly there. So it may have already got there. I'm not sure.
I've had a few people comment to me that they're envious, or they think it's positive that Canada has basically implemented, like, it's effectively been a trial run of a universal basic income type program.
That's right. Yep.
And my response to that is, I would have fewer issues with it if I felt like that money would be guaranteed. But I don't feel like it will be, even if it goes that way. There'll be strings. It'll be, you have to prove your vaccination record, or you have to prove your compliance in some degree with all of these other things in order to qualify for the money. It'll be it's a carrot on a stick. It's not a right.
Look, the universal income question is going to become a bigger question in the future. It's because you've got a situation where up until, I would say, the 1950s, classical market forces could, even though a lot of what the textbooks write is just nonsense because it's based on a barter type economy, and when you've got fair currencies and all that, the economy doesn't work like that. But when politicians, having their own policies and stuff like that from both sides of, but you get to a point in history where the productivity, it's never happened before in the history of humanity, where because of automation, robotics, you need less humans to produce stupendous amounts of goods and services.
Yep.
At that point, you basically get a situation where you can rapidly move into a rentier society. Sort of where everybody, a small group owns everything and everybody else owns nothing, because they don't need as many people, so they don't need to pay as many people, working people, of parts of those profits that they produced, because you've got less people producing far more wealth and getting a smaller cut of that wealth that they produce, let alone you've got a whole lot of community people, like people on YouTube and all, that are creating content that are getting very little. The actual producers are getting very little compared to the people who are controlling the network and who are getting the lion's share of the actual profits that are coming from that product, because it is a product. It's a what we're producing here as creators is an entertainment blah 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 information type product, but at the end of the day we're getting very little for it compared to others for the content. They're not actually out there producing it. Without us, you'd have a network which was useless, couldn't do much.
How much does YouTube take from super chats? The third?
30%. That's like a massive
crazy.
Tax.
It's crazy.
And precisely.
It's a purely passive income stream for YouTube.
Exactly. And there's no regulation, no nothing on it, so they can do whatever they like.
Yeah.
In that regard. So in a sense, when you have a very highly automated society, if you cannot recycle back part of that wealth in terms of to the population that actually produced it in many regards, you're going to have a big problem.
Yes.
Society will crumble and end up becoming where everybody's basically homeless, without anything. And you've got this small oligarchy holding a whole lot of robots. They don't need the rest of us, in a sense,
I don't know that universal basic income is the correct solution, but I'm more interested in the discussion because it's
not the perfect solution.
Acknowledging the reality of the problem is the thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. Now, there are many other ways you could basically go down that pathway. You could go down a Star Trek universe where you've got direct democracy, and basically all these sort of instruments are basically owned by the commons in a sense, but within a direct democracy, not some sort of new political party like in Russia was or stuff like that, but where you've got direct democracy and you've basically got these sort of means where they're democratized between everyone, and we're indirectly involved in the means of production. In the long run, the robots are doing most of it at some point in the future. So that's one way. It's not going to be utopian. It's not going to be basically a paradise on earth. Anybody that thinks that that's going to be the case, no, that's just nonsense. Humans are still going to have problems. So humans are still going to be killing themselves, killing each other, raping each other, doing all sorts of things. Humans are humans. They're fallen creatures. So let's get beyond that point. Sometimes the more stable a world is, the more people get violent, because sometimes when you've got adversary and you're actually forced to basically struggle a bit and all that, it focuses you in such a way where you're less likely you're actually more cooperative with people to get certain things achieved. Where when you've got everything, there's more reasons to bitch and moan and gossip and fight and all that sort of stuff. So it's not necessarily going to be paradise on earth. It could be an absolute bitch fight between people. So there's a lot of nonsense out there that is being promoted by certain people about this post-human idea and all that. And I don't believe in this post-human idea. It's just nonsense. Let alone sort of uploading one's brain and all that. That's nonsense as well. I'll just answer this one bit. I'd like to continue on this subject a bit. I do like this subject. I think you guys and other people would be interested. But in terms of, look, Brain Boss, histamines and all that, histamines are not an issue. I eat shitloads, absolutely debauchery of cheese products, cured meats. I mean, I probably consume about 3 times a week cured meats. Sometimes I can eat cured meats every day. I eat shitloads of histamine heavy foods. I do not have outbreaks in my skin or anywhere. As long as you're getting enough vitamin D and you're basically closing those tight junctions in your gut, and you're basically supporting a good microbiome in the gut that breaks down histamines as well. A good microbiome actually breaks down histamines. Guess what other thing breaks down histamines? Oh, taurine. Oh, that comes from an animal food as well. So there's a lot of things that break down histamines. The problem is people basically are not eating. They're eating too much refined stuff even in carnivore or keto world, they're eating too many what I call junk treats, not real foods, junk treats. And these are the problems as well, because they're not getting enough of the fat-soluble vitamins and stuff like that. You can't eat a steak and then take a whole lot of vitamins, you know. But I said you can't take a steak and take. I actually get it in a powder form. I get it in a powder form, which is pure taurine, nothing else. No, so I get 100% pure taurine, and
no
then
magnesium stearate lubricant.
I've got nothing in it. Mine is 100%. It's just pure taurine, and I put it as a powder. I basically put it sometimes in my yogurt, sometimes in water, sometimes in milk, and combine it. Because it's clear and stuff like that. Usually, if I put a bit of coffee with the milk and mix it, I don't even notice it. Mm-hmm. So that's another way I do it. So I have different ways, but I try to get things. If I'm going to get something which is processed, I'm trying to get it as least with very little stuff in it as possible. And but again, all these things sort of help. The problem is a lot of people that do have histamine problems. If you go back, even when people were eating a mixed diet, that means they weren't eating a perfect diet back in the 50s and 60s and all that. Things like histamines and skin outbreaks and stuff like that people talk about nowadays didn't even exist. Because a lot of these people are still eating real foods. They weren't eating a lot of packaged foods. A lot of people have sustained a lot of damage from processed crap over a number of years. And just because you've gone on a carnivore diet, guys, you know what? This may sound really bizarre to you guys, but it's going to take you at least a decade, if not more, to heal all the damage you've done over 20 or 30 years. You know, and if you think it's going to happen any quicker, I mean, I can tell you that when I was doing keto and paleo and low carb and all that, I still had a lot of, skin type issues. And it's only in very recent years that have actually gone away. Because you know what else actually caused a lot of problems? Because we need a lot of sulfur as well, is oxalates, oxalate dumping and oxalates. And that's another problem as well with the gut as well. And that takes a lot of, and that now you understand why I was using, and I still use to some extent, but to less extent, a lot of these sulfur amino acids. Again, because oxalates, and if you don't have enough of the sulfur amino acids in there, your body can actually generate, and some of the bugs in your gut also can generate more oxalate. So sulfur is important, and our environment is very sulfur depleting. We've got a lot of toxins. This is why I argue with people, stop trying to cause yourself too much hormesis. Everybody's out there taking all these hermetic things and actually stressing their body, or, and you know what? You need to detox that sort of stuff, that poison that you just put in from that supplement that gave you the hormetic effect. And guess what you need for that? Sulfur. Oh, and I wonder why we're more and more depleted, and why our guts have issues, because we're depleting ourselves with sulfur from even supplements that we do and stuff like that. So that's why I got rid of all those things, the hormetic stresses and all that. I realized it's junk and a waste of money. If you want hermetic stress, go and do some exercise or get into a sauna. That'll give you a hermetic stress.
Sauna.
Yes.
Exactly. So let's not waste our time with that sort of stuff. Thoughts on high-dose melatonin supplements? Apparently they're great for the mitochondria. Yes and no. They can cause other issues where they can down-regulate your own endogenous stuff. You should not be taking high-dose melatonin, because what actually happens is supplemental actually stays in your system for too long. And the next day you feel really rat shit and tired all day. And you suppress cortisol in the daytime, in the early hours, which you need to get yourself going and getting a whole lot of other biological functions happening. So too much of anything isn't a good thing. So if you've got issues, you may take a small amount, like 3 milligrams for a very short amount of time. But it's not something that I recommend. You've got to fix the underlying issues. a lot of the underlying issues when you look at things like sleep disorders and stuff like that. There are circadian rhythm issues. There are issues basically. There are 3 axes. One is food and the gut. The gut plays a big role in basically sleep. And if issues are still there, underlying issues, that can be a problem. There are actually certain bacterial strains that actually can reduce the mucosa in your lungs as well, and in other parts, which actually can allow those systems to work better and actually improve sleep as well. So there's a lot of different things. Then circadian rhythms, that's a big one. Blue light, circadian rhythms.
Targeted probiotics you can take too that will specifically increase the endogenous production of GABA, for example.
That's right. You can take also taurine in the evening because that increases GABA as well.
I just took some taurine.
Yeah, it does, and it's a good thing for increasing, sort of GABA and also calming down the mind, which is really important. So it's a reason why people, when they go on a carnivore diet, because they're eating more taurine, they're getting a number of these amino acids, sulfur amino acids in particular, they actually end up calming themselves more. It's why you see the... Yep.
This is something that a lot of raw dieters will report, is that they get tremendous calming effects.
Yes. People once they actually move away from the crappy foods, they are calm. You look at the there was a video just recently done by some woke people in California, done by Sean, and they were basically literally chastising each other like the lunatics that they are, and calling each other all sorts of names or telling them, oh, you're not using the appropriate terms. Anyway, I just know of 2 biological terms, and one's male and one's female, and one's an X chromosome and one's a Y chromosome. But anyway, we won't argue that point with these sort of people who likely kill me because they're so erratic and so hyped up and so, on crazy on soy and sugar that they're likely to leap at you and try to harm you in many ways. These are people that are very unstable. And so, yes.
I'm not laughing at that, Harry. I'm laughing at something completely unrelated.
Oh, fair enough.
Just for the future people who are looking to lynch me for watching this video. No, I agree. It's reaching some pretty incredible points of absurdity.
It's bizarre out there, guys. It's bizarre. Some of the sort of stuff that you hear, or people, you say something and then it's not like that in Tasmania, but I've heard in other parts where people saying something and people are like correcting them or telling them, no, they're actually trying to, and I'm going, I usually turn around and I reverse it on them. So you believe in freedom? Yes. So why are you trying to tell me what to say? So it's, you gotta hammer them back. It's like this other nutcase that I actually put a comment and said something along the lines. Let me see if I can find it. There's always some nutcase tracking me on the YouTubia, that is. But oh well, they have their fun. They have their fun moments. Let me damn find that comment. Have to go to my history of comments. Actually, that's history. That's the thing that I haven't done. I haven't checked for a while. Comments down there. I've changed it slightly. Used to be slightly different. Let me just find. This was one of Sky's. It's called "Is This the angriest vegan was, and I had left a comment there. And share. Oops. Turn that off for a sec. And I basically had said here, Sky, I slaughtered animals with Dad from an early age, so I'm very comfortable with it and cutting up meats. I don't know, but maybe it's harder for someone that does it in older age, because I was talking about some people that get post-traumatic stress disorder or whatever, that have worked in slaughterhouses or whatever else. But anyway, I have no problem with disposing of dead animals or whatever. I've always been the person, like Dad or Mum, get rid of that animal when it's died. So oops. Let me just, that's wrong. This one, I hit the wrong one, didn't I? So I'm going to open up.
It's okay to like your own comments.
Oh, did I? Oh, God.
Everyone does it sometimes.
Without realizing. So I had, here, this guy, he goes, let me just zoom in to the comment. It's the typical sort of, can't go any further, typical sort of stuff. Oops. Some of the Greek websites that I actually look at.
She was saying something about cannibals.
Yeah. I've just zoomed in far too much. Okay.
Why is it still zooming?
Because I went too far in.
There's a delay.
Yeah. There's a delay, exactly. Okay. Oops. Too far. So here's that's what cannibal culture would say. It wouldn't actually make them a more sane individual, having been indoctrinated since birth to not care about other lives. So basically, you're equivalent to another animal. You're a cannibal eating another animal. And I just go, I'm an Orthodox Christian and value all human life. It's only pagans and atheists like you that devalue human life. So you see how they basically, that guy there said, me and the animals are the same. So if you eat an animal, you're a cannibal. You're a bad person.
Mm.
And where do you get your ethical base from? It's a relativist, so it's your opinion. Where I basically get my ethical base from orthodoxy, which comes from God. And as I say, I'm an Orthodox Christian and value all human life. We shouldn't be ashamed of saying that we're Christians and saying that we value all human life. And only pagans and atheists devalue human life, because they basically, especially these sort of vegan pagans and vegan atheists who devalue human life and put us at the same level as an animal. And it's a nice way to reverse the thing, and don't play their game, guys. Do not play their game. I'm not going to sit there talking about the morals about slaughtering animals or not with them. Why should I? It has nothing to do with humans. I'm not slaughtering a human. And human life I value as a Christian. Mm-hmm. But I don't, the animals that were given to basically consume and provide nourishment to human flesh, I don't see a problem with that. Neither does the church. So, you know, just because these people would think that they are the equivalent of a pig or a donkey or a horse or a cow or whatever, you know, that's where you get into the insanity of basically saying if it's the same, well, then you can marry a horse, you can marry a camel, you can marry basically a pig, you can, you know, have fornication with it and all that. So as far as I'm concerned, it's these people who, with their relativist ethics, that basically succumb into basically this sort of hedonistic sort of nonsense. So I call them out. I mean, I got no reply back, obviously, because once
for a long time when Tristan, Prime Ledge Health, was engaging in vegan debates, or I don't want to say for a long time, for a while, his first question in the debate would be if they believe in objective morality.
Exactly.
That would be the starting point of the debate. For
I agree.
The reasons that you're outlining, that's the fundamental component that they differ on.
Yeah. What is the foundation of your ethics? Is usually which is similar, but what's the foundation of your ethics?
Yeah.
You know, where do you derive your truth? You know, in terms of the moral compass, because, you know, when we're talking about Darwinian competition between animals, all animals are species. So not to be a species, even under Darwinian logic, they are violating Darwinian logic, because Darwinian logic tells you you're a species. You are competing with other animals in nature for your neck of the wood or your space or your, you know, all animals do that. They're competing amongst each other, and the survival of the most adaptable it is as they compete, which can adapt better to an environment and survive, and which don't go into oblivion. So even if you basically say that my basis is I derive it from there, you have to accept Darwinian competition between species. And if you accept that, you're a species immediately. So from a scientific position, you're a species. From a religious position, you're a species. So this is where science and religion actually are in complete agreement about being species. We are not, one sees us as not equal, which is the religious part. The other one sees us as competing and not equal, but as in terms of we're not equal within the natural system of competition and all that. So in a different way, but still sees us as different. We're different organisms. So they can't even have it from a scientific position. They've got no argument. So where do they derive their moral compass or their moral basis or their moral foundation or their objective, moral ethics or whatever you want to call it? They derive it from the ethical foundations that come from the human cultural environment, which basically means where's that based on? If you go back, it's based on a very much a strong theological religious basis. So they've got no argument. They are absolutely crackpots, and they've got no nonsensical arguments whatsoever. Let's be close and comfortable, close and, you know. Yeah, so that's why it's very easy to destroy their whole arguments. They just joke. They're a joke. It's this relative nonsense. Basically, I usually I make it quite clear that the reason why these people prefer to play with the truth in that way and promote this relativistic nonsense is because basically they want to basically think like that. They want to behave like that. You know, it's like a kid that's a bad kid, wants to be naughty. They're going to justify it some way.
Yeah.
I want to be a naughty kid, so I have to basically come up with some bullshit story to justify my naughtiness. And it's the same bloody thing.
Basically, when you challenge somebody on whether their morality is objective or not, that's basically what you're doing. Yeah. You're basically saying, are you actually comfortable with behaving poorly, or are you rationalizing it to yourself?
That's true as well, Shell. You can dysregulate a natural system that basically plays a big role in the way it's. You don't want to be playing around with the circadian rhythms.
Rebound insomnia is what that's called.
Yeah, exactly.
But it should be temporary. If it's just from supplementing melatonin, it will work itself out.
Yeah, if you take away the supplement, that's true. Well, it should go back to normal and all that. The other stuff where you've got certain bacterial sort of states which are out of whack that can pose issues with insomnia, and there's also the big one is also blue light. I mean, I can't say it anymore. There are also stress for different reasons. People sort of there are reasons where stress can't be managed properly for whatever reason and all that. Sometimes I've known people going into like clinics to literally just walk away from all their problems or stuff like that in order to basically just settle down their whole body. You know, they're struggling to try and get themselves into a parasympathetic state for whatever reason. It could be chemical, it could be environmental, it could be things that they're consuming or the state of their gut or a lot of different things. These things aren't easy. You know, it's as a number of people know. Wouldn't you agree, Jared? You know, they're not easy to get around these sort of things. And so basically, you know, we can only trial and error certain things and, you know, find out what it is. It's like asthma. You know, I've got situations where I've tried a number of different things with people and I had to go through all these different variations of what it could be. My sister's was structural. That was easy. Lung surfactant, fix that, gone. You know, other people have basically got certain bacteria that actually cause massive amounts of mucosal stuff in their lungs, and you have to basically fix their gut microbiome. You have to literally find ways of killing off or limiting certain bacterial strains and increasing other bacterial strains. And the biggest problem is when you're dealing with a young child that basically wants to eat sugar and support those damn little buggers, you know, that are causing a lot of the issues. That's where the biggest headache goes. And sometimes, you know, I left in a situation where I say to the parents, well, this is what you have to do. You need to discipline control your child. And I get sort of strange looks by these people or that I deal with. But the reality is unless they do that, it's not going to help. The problem is the kids go to their friends' places and they get exposed because every family now has got kibble in the household.
So much socialization is dependent on food.
It's
the
problem.
I have a lot of compassion for parents for that reason. That, like, do you stunt your child by ostracizing them effectively, by isolating them away from their peer group in a fundamental way, by making them eat something completely different? You know.
Yeah, it's hard because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah,
you're in this sort of quagmire of sort of how do we deal with this sort of stuff, and it's yes, to a large extent. Look, like all sort of similar to cancers and stuff like that, check out my cancer protocol. A lot of the stuff that I talk about there is very much applicable to also these blood type leukemias and stuff like that. So any other suggestions you guys have heard anything recent that I haven't heard of?
Not specifically to, not to a specific type of cancer like that. No.
Specifically, not.
Yeah. Look, to a large amount, when you're dealing with cancer, you want to reduce the fuels two major fuels are basically, things like glutamate, using glutamate inhibitors, which I've talked about and all that. Things that primarily inhibit at the cancer cell level rather than the general cell level. So you don't want to, 100% you could never do anyway, but you wouldn't want to do it because it'd be very damaging to the rest of the body. But the other thing is, I always say to people, ketogenic diet. If you've got a cancer, any type of cancer, doesn't matter what, ketogenic diet is the first port of call.
Get massive amounts of saturated fat and fat-soluble vitamins in there.
Yeah. And what is that going to give you? It's going to give you deuterium-depleted water as well. So you can speed up the process slightly by buying some deuterium-depleted water to clear up some of the mess that was caused by the sugar in the past, the bad diet. But at the same time, you still need to get good levels of fat, animal fats, for both the deuterium depletion, also to basically, stress the cancer cells out by going very low carb. Tends to basically, but then using those, the biggest problem is we know, glutamate is one thing that gets utilized by the cancer cells, and they try and actually find ways of getting it. That's another reason why they sort of their cancers usually try to spread into other tissues to take stuff from them, and get some of these materials. So a glutamate inhibitor, some the deuterium depleted water and stuff like that. These things have all shown to basically work. So, I mean, in some animals they work better than other animals, like humans it takes a bit longer. I've noticed with deuterium depleted water. With dogs, it's really fast. We don't know why. I don't know why. But they just seem to respond much better with lower deuterium. Maybe their tolerance to deuterium is not as good as ours. And so they do better under those circumstances. Could be. They also may be basically, one thing that I haven't looked in, and if there's somebody with veterinary knowledge, do dogs basically, when it comes to glutamate, do they require more than us or less? If they require less, maybe those pathways, that's what I'm thinking, probably less. Their pathways, if that's the case, then maybe that's less of a fuel in their body. And so the deuterium depletion seems to work better with them because there's less of the other fuel, is what I'm thinking. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a veterinary researcher or scientist or doctor, so I've got no idea about these sort of issues about dog physiology. So I don't know enough to talk about it. I'm just guessing that there's going to be some reason why deuterium depleted water seems to work much faster on them than other animals, including humans. I don't know. But there's got to be some reason behind it. But it does work. We know that. And there's a number of people that have got really extreme cancers, like Andrew Schofield, who's in the UK. Yeah, he's the guy that had the brain cancer, the glioblastoma multiforme, and he basically went on a very strict ketogenic diet, and he uses Taurus. He uses glutamate inhibitors. He uses all these sort of things. He wasn't in the beginning, but he is now, which is really interesting and all that. I sort of subscribe to him, and I've sort of interacted with him and put it posts and all that. I just never got around, because he doesn't do a lot of interviews in that regard. But I probably should approach him at some stage and try and get him on an interview to get into some of this sort of stuff as well. But he's a very switched on person. I don't think he's. I don't know how much he knows about these sort of senolytic type substances, compounds that are out there. How much he's aware of those sort of things. sort of, I've been aware of them for some time, but more in terms of anti-aging, but not in terms of cancer, in a sense. So senolytic compounds like, the ones that I get from my father, ficetine, and some other stuff, which is really good at basically killing off a lot of the old cells, or getting rid of them, causing apoptosis basically of senescent cells. My idea is more to basically use them senolytic compounds to basically naturally force down CD38. So CD38 is the thing that increases from senescent cells. It's a protective mechanism. It's not a bad thing, and it's a good thing to have, a protective mechanism, because you don't want cells that are senescent becoming cancerous. That's why CD38, I believe, is a protective mechanism to prevent these things from going rogue.
So you don't want to suppress it too much.
No, that's why, another reason why I enough about taking too much niacin beyond the 300 milligrams. So that's another reason why I enough and say, do not take high doses, let alone affects gluconeogenesis and all these other things, but it also does bring down CD38, the protective mechanism, too low, and that's not a smart thing. So you've got to be careful with what, a lot of these people do reductionist research or reductionist approaches, and they run after certain things, but they ignore other risks that they're putting themselves in. So you've got to be very careful with this sort of stuff. The old thing, do no harm. I do religiously follow that, and I'm very cautious about avoiding reductionism, because I've succumbed to reductionism myself. I've like with boron, I got caught out, which was a classical reductionist thing. Oh yeah, it normalizes hormones. Get on it. I knew that being on too high a dose for too long isn't a good thing as well, but at the same time, I was completely unaware of the effects of magnifying magnesium in particular type deficiencies and potassium deficiencies, these sort of mineral deficiencies. And and people were getting certain effects because they had those things. Well, it made them aware that they had those things. But, I missed that. Now, in this case, that's a benign thing. Okay, you got a deficiency. It magnifies it. It makes it obvious. That could cause a bit of discomfort, but at the end of the day, it's not going to kill you. But if, you go around telling people to take mega doses of niacin or mega dose of these compounds, really suppress down CD38, and then you basically make these people more vulnerable to cancer, that's what reductionism can ultimately lead to, something nasty like that. You've got to be very careful. It's the same thing with CD157, which is also another enzymatic pathway that cancer uses for stem cells. So if you've got an active cancer, like in a metastatic state, the last thing you want to be doing is taking any stem cell therapy of any sort. We're talking about even your own or the expensive stuff, any product or any type whatsoever. The majority of people, stem cell therapy is pretty good. It will basically give you a lot of more youthful tissue and heal a lot of tissue. But if you've got an active cancer, it's not the thing. And the population's increasing with active cancer, becoming more and more because of the kibble culture. They're talking about 1 in 3 in the not too distant future. Jesus. That's frightening. That is damn frightening. That is the sort of the trend line in terms of the growth of cancers. I need to come here in the center. The trend line in terms of the cancers like that, and they know it because every year it increases in a certain fashion. So it basically means that within a couple of years' time from now, we are going to be in a deep, deep mess, around the world. So, and this is not coming from, like some crackpot or whatever. This is coming from the official health authorities that are talking that cancer is growing at such a level that in the future it may be 1 in 3. in the US initially, and then it'll spread throughout the world. It's just going to bust the whole system. The whole medical system is just going to collapse, fall on its face completely. So yeah, not looking good for the future of humanity at all. So the people that, you know, we're moving into very, very dark times. You know, they're looking at taxing our meat, making it difficult to access meat or raw dairy or products or animal foods.
Yep.
And so, you know, and even in some countries, you know, they've got limits on, you know, there are a few places around the world I've heard that actually ban not cured, raw meats. That means you can't serve up raw meats, like, you know, beef tartare or anything like that. Well, it's illegal in some countries. Raw sort of type meats.
It's funny. I actually discovered recently that the FDA in the United States, they have banned, you can't eat beef lung. And that was weird because in northeastern Brazil, there's actually a traditional meal that is actually a soup made with beef lung, and I was like, wow, this is weird. Why the hell would they ban beef lungs?
Really?
I've wanted to try beef lung for like over a year, and I haven't been able to get it. And I've been able to get raw milk in Canada, so I mean that's beef lung is. It's like ostensibly it's because it's so much surface area, it spoils like almost instantly. But I'm not sure. So I worked in a butcher shop 2 days a week for the past year. I'm not anymore.
Oops,
but
we just lost him.
What's that? Am I still here?
Yeah, a lot of animal products are either being marginalized, restricted, or basically being outright outlawed.
I could never get beef. I could never get beef lung even working in a butcher shop.
I'll remove Jared. So then, yep. I had to remove you to bring you back in. Oh, Loki's in the middle.
What's going on?
Oh, I'm sandwiched now.
Am I back? Could you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
You're
you.
back. You popped out.
Huh. I don't know what happened. I didn't do anything. I worked for a butcher and still couldn't get beef lung. Like he wasn't allowed to request the lungs with the cows when he was getting them slaughtered.
Damn.
I don't understand. Ostensibly it's because there's so much surface area that it spoils really, really easily, but I'm not sure.
But I don't know. There was something about it's a really really shitty excuse, but something about the lungs harboring too many like substances or something, environmental pollutants. I'm not sure. It was some made up excuse.
Yeah.
Now you don't want to go too low and that's why I do not recommend like short periods of time to actually, if you've got the high, let's say you had a really bad diet, you've got a short period, like taking very high, low depleted deuterium water is an option, but I wouldn't do it because the body actually tries to set a different set point. I don't want within an active cancer to set a lower set point because it gives you less of a margin of movement. Is what actually there's a certain biological changes that happen. It's something that that Boris Laszlo Boris has talked about, but never really explained in detail. So I can't really explain it in detail either because I don't have the biochemistry because he never provided that. It was one of his lectures that he actually did. And the UCLA lecture that I actually watched last time on some of these biochemical pathways, he didn't explain it either there. And I'm going, ugh. So I don't really have that perfect answer. But the thing is, you definitely want to be in the lower part. That means below 100 parts per million. So you probably, I think they've got a DDW 85. So that's the sort of stuff. And you want to be on a ketogenic diet because you want to basically, and more therapeutic, which basically has 115 So eventually what you will do is you will come down to the low 100s, and that's where you want to be at the lower of the normal. You don't want to be outside because it can be quite catabolic and can have an effect on the functioning of the mitochondria. But as I said, he didn't really explain it in a detail enough for me to understand. So the issue here lies that when it comes to deuterium, you want to go below the 100, but not too low. And eventually you want to basically focus on the therapeutic level of ketosis, which means that your protein levels will come down slightly, and it's primarily keep insulin down and keep the insulin to glucagon ratio very low, close to nearly 1. So you still have muscle sparing and preserving like you would have on a short-term fast. But here, because you're putting a lot of energy in, the body's going to turn over the bad organelles and cells and all that and use them as new building blocks to build more tissue. So you don't really have to worry. It's the level of depletion that you're concerned about, and that means the water that you're going to be creating in the metabolic water, which is going to come from that animal fat. And so that's what you want, because the problem is you can't sustain buying this sort of stuff. It's so expensive, metabolic water. It's really expensive. I usually recommend it to people to buy it for their coffees and stuff like that. So if you're on this sort of therapeutic state of where with cancer and all that, what you want to do is you want to buy the water to be able to use it for drinking when you're thirsty, to drinking when you're making your coffee and stuff like that. Not to be used basically as your general, you should be getting most of your hydration from animal fats, and they should be displacing the deuterium eventually in your system. Need to get it out in the sun. You need to up your vitamin D, because vitamin D has been shown in countless studies to be cancer protective and has anti-tumor, fighting characteristics. Taurine is another thing. Sulfur because it plays a big role in detoxification, stuff like that, helping your liver to work better. So taurine is another thing. My focus on that video of cancer wasn't to cover everything. I do want to make one on taurine and a few other things to be able to be utilized with cancers, but it wasn't an extensive list. It was just focused on the key ones: keto diet, get rid of the sugar, get the metabolic water in, get the deuterium levels down, shut off the glutamate pathway, which is the other major energy pathway that the cancer can use. Stress the damn thing, some exercise, vitamin D, get out in the sun, stuff like that. Those sort of major things. But there are other things like obviously taurine plays a role as well, and a number of other things. But I didn't want to go into too much of that sort of stuff. They are secondary roles. The major role is basically starving the little buggers and closing down their main nutrient pathways. That's the thing. And also reduce the level of deuterium in the cell, because bringing down the deuterium in the cell, what will happen is, as deuterium levels start going down and your melatonin every night will repair those nanomotors and fix the electron chains, what will happen over time is your energy will start going up. As your energy goes up, glycolysis will start going down. The cell will basically turn off the oncogenes, and once that means that cell's still damaged to some extent. It's still in a deranged way, but it will turn off the oncogenes, and what will happen is you'll get oxidative phosphorylation happening and working properly again. Now, once we're in this sort of remission, we've got some good cells that can be saved and will get saved by the body, and some cells that are just beyond salvage. That's when we want to get rid of the damn things, because we want to make you less vulnerable to having severely damaged cells. And with this sort of, type of supplements, the fisentin, which basically causes the apoptosis of these senescent cells, So these senolytic types substances, they can actually force the greater apoptosis of those. The other cells that are not as damaged as a consequences, they can be saved, in many cases, by lowering the deuterium and allowing the body to naturally heal those cells and clearing out the junk with a bit of fasting and stuff like that. But do not do any fasting if you're in a state of metastatic cancer. No. Early stages, okay. Later stages, no. Even when you're in remission, do not do it. Just keep the fat levels up, the deuterium of depletion happening, and trying to kill off with the senolytics, trying to kill off these senescent cells, trying to reduce the vulnerable cells that could potentially cause, a relapse, or secondary, it coming back. So that's where the biggest problem, a lot of people, they kill off a lot of the cancer cells with chemo, and then basically they go back to their old diet, feeding those ones that are left behind. And they're even more ruthless and more lethal and more dangerous, where what happens is you become resistant to chemo. Now, there are a number of things also that help in that regard. Even taurine helps when it comes to chemo resistance. So that's another thing that I didn't mention in that other thing. It's for a later video, but that's where some of these sort of stuff like taurine can be used in chemotherapy. I don't know why it's not being used, and some of the other stuff, because what it would do is it would basically prevent the resistance and allow a shorter period of requiring to do this and getting better results for the average punter out there we're talking about, without, obviously we would like to see people radically change their lifestyle and do other things, but in this world it's so bloody hard. At the end of the day, you just want them to survive and not relapse they probably will relapse, but it may take a decade or two or 15 years before they have another cancer, but at least they'll get 15 years or 10 years out of their life. Where currently, with the situation, they usually within 5 years they have got a second cancer. So, and then the survival after that is pretty abysmal when you look at the literature. So it's the sort of situation. When you talk about 1 in 3, we are concerned in this world about some virus that basically is only primarily killing the frail and elderly, and we've upended our whole society, and we are moving to a world of 1 in 3 people having a cancer because of eating shitloads of kibble and other crap. This is how crazy our world is. It's madness. It doesn't make any logical sense that we are basically poisoning generations upon generations with all this nonsense and all the new diseases. It's a bit like, Pottinger's cat. If you take a look at all these new modern diseases, people come to me and they go, oh, my kid's got this and all that. And I go, never heard of it. And you go and you find out there's only a couple of people in the whole world that have got it. And you go, where did this come from? They had to create a new name because it didn't exist before, ever. Definitely not in a tribal society. So it's crazy out there, the stuff that's actually emerging and stuff like that. It's the old thing that Pottinger, Dr. Pottinger, he actually noticed with the cats, all these funny deformations and malformations and deformities and malformations and different types. So those subtle genetic differences or subtle differences maybe in how much they may have eaten of this one animal, because nobody's going to eat exactly the same or have the same genetics or whatever. These subtle differences were enough to basically manifest in slightly different ways. They're all part of the same milieu or the same, they come from the same sort of thing. But yeah, so it's weird and crazy that we have been experimenting on the human species in the same way, and we're starting to see these early emergence, because we think about it, 33 years is a human generation. So we're talking about where the majority of, we were born, I was born being a 50-year-old and a mid-50-year-old, 55 this year. I was born outside that really strong sort of kibble culture. So the first generation was kids that were born probably about 2 decades ago. So we're not even through the first generation, in a sense. So we're just getting into the second generation, let alone third, fourth, and fifth. And even in the second generation, we're seeing such dramatic, 1 in 3 with cancer, all these other dramatic things. So, obviously, after 3 generations, after 5 generations, you're finished as a species. If you continue that way. But, we're in the sort of like the young kids now with all these problems and health issues and all that are that second generation of absolute kibble culture. Because before that, there were some processed stuff, but we didn't have an absolute kibble culture. Kibble culture is sort of, not even in the 80s did we have a kibble culture. Still in the 80s, people still ate at home and ate proper food, generally speaking. They did not eat, packaged goods. Packaged goods, it's really the last, you could say, 20 years, that really we've gone on steroids on packaged foods. So that's not it. That's within 1 generation. And it's getting frightening out there because younger and younger kids are coming up with all sorts of strange diseases, strange ailments and conditions that never have been recorded in the literature before. They have to make up new names for them. Or put them into a similar category. Now, the autism spectrum and all these other spectrums have become wider. Let's add more people because we don't know where to stick them.
Yeah, the prevalence of childhood leukemia has always, well, I don't say always, has for a long time been very striking to me. That's doesn't make sense for it to occur in such a young subset of the population from an evolutionary standpoint, unless it's something environmental that's doing it to those kids.
Precisely. And that's what's happened. It's an environmental exposure to a kibble culture, to processed garbage. Because even if you go back to the 30s, where there was a big 30s, 40s, and 50s, you had a big uptake of seed oil through that period. And that's where we saw the big heart attacks, the strokes and cardiovascular disease and all that, mushrooming and ballooning out in that period. But still in that period, people still were eating, meat, eggs, dairy, full cream dairy, and all these other foods. So they had a slight protective effect on them. But the moment we started moving into the junk food, I mean, it started in the US primarily in the 1950s, but even then it was sort of like people would go and have a milkshake or go and have some sort of thing, and it would be like once a week. Even then, it wasn't a regular thing. It was sort of like a treat, a going out treat or whatever. And the 80s, 1980s is when that started changing. It started becoming more regular, but still, even then, it was probably, the weekends, like the Fridays, the Saturdays, and, those sort of days where people went to the pubs or the different things like that. And now it's just everywhere. You look at people's, I literally go past people's trolleys when I'm in the supermarket. And basically, like, what was it, 2 days ago, I had some, the only thing that I had in my basket was cream and kombucha. And basically, what's that?
I'm just kidding.
And basically,
I'm calling you a hippie for buying cream and kombucha and nothing else.
That's it. And these people right next to me literally had this. It was all packaged, one after the thing. Like frozen pizza, frozen this or frozen that, and it was all packaged foods and all that. And you go, God Almighty! And these people were overweight, and you could see them; they were very unhealthy.
The first 3 ingredients on those packaged foods is going to be some combination of flour, sugar, canola oil.
That's it, basically. Yeah,
exactly.
That's all they're eating continuously. It's just basically the worst foods that you can actually consume, they're consuming on a daily basis. It's crazy out there. It's scary that it's at such an endemic level. What can one say? You've got a comment there. It's likely that the A1, A2 dairy comparison is overblown.
Yeah, that was just in response to somebody that was asking about if they should for A2 dairy.
Okay. Yeah, I suspect it is. I know a lot of people make a big issue about the A1 thing, but if you've got a good gut microbiome and stuff like that, actually that actual protein actually should get denatured, should get broken down, and you shouldn't be basically absorbing any of those sort of compounds. It's really basically when people got leaky guts and other issues. It's like the lectins. You consume raw milk, and you get the lactoferrin. You'll basically bind a lot of those lectins. But even then, the body can get rid of some lectins through the feces. But if you've got a leaky gut, they're going to get into the bloodstream, and they're going to go and lodge. So it's both the quantity, it's the way we process food now. When in the past we fermented food and got rid of a lot of this stuff and brought the load down quite a bit. Then we had protective foods like raw dairy. That pasteurization is a very recent phenomenon when it comes to dairy in humanity, and so we basically killed off. I mean, if they had known back then, they probably would have pasteurized and then thrown in supplemental lactoferrin. But even to this day, they still don't know it. But it doesn't surprise me. People don't even understand the Randall cycle, and Philip Randall actually published it back in 1963, and we still don't understand the majority of people. So it doesn't surprise me that things like lactoferrin are completely missed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were to basically look after the gut health of people in the Western world, you'd actually supplement lactoferrin in these foods. I know it sounds crazy, but it would help to some extent in that regard. But I mean, a lot of gut issues. It's the reason why people in the past, vitamin D and lactoferrin, and they got that. They used to wheel them out of the hospitals into the sun, and they would give them a glass or sometimes 2 glasses of raw milk in the hospital. God, what a service! Now that's really taking care of patients. Giving them real food and giving them the sun. What do they do nowadays? They lock them up in some bloody little room. There's no natural light. There's a whole lot of blue light exposures continuously 24/7. And on top of that, basically you're being fed kibble and you're being injected with all sorts of compounds that are hardly tested properly, and a lot of them. As long as they don't kill the rat, you're fine. You're good to go.
And people think that's what medicine is these days. They all think I don't know. They certainly
Pretty
Americans think that medicine means
Australians do
getting
as well.
getting some sort of pharmaceutical cocktail to undo whatever issue that your body's having, as opposed to just maximizing the resources that your body needs to do what it knows how to do.
Let me put it this way, Jared. Have you noticed a lot of people now on my streams don't really ask me about supplements? When I first started this channel, everybody asked me, what supplements do you take, Harry? What supplements should I take for this? What supplements should I take for that? That's all they bloody ask me. What pill should I take? What magical pill should I take to basically fix my problem? Mm-hmm. And I go, well, what sort of, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? That really is 90% of it. Now, there are some conditions that still need to be corrected, and you may need to take some supplementation for a short period of time to adjust things, fix up a microbiome. You need vitamin D with B vitamins. Fix up, deal with an oxalate issue of dumping. You need MSM, you need sulfur to deal with it, because otherwise your body's going to get depleted very fast. So there are reasons to take things, because we did not live, none of us, me, Lukey, Jared, have not lived in a natural environment like the Maasai, growing up in a Maasai family, right through into old age, eating a species-appropriate diet all our life. No, We come to the low carb world of different varieties, whether it's the keto, carnivore, whatever. We come to the low carb world damaged, severely damaged with all sorts of issues. And in those sort of cases, yes, supplementation is useful to manage or to deal with some of this sort of stuff and clear up some of this, these problems. But ultimately, food will be thy medicine, the true medicine, and it won't come out of a pill in the long run. It takes time. It takes, patience. I said a patient, you've got to be patient. A lot of people aren't patient. You got to be patient as much as possible. Anyway, guys, it's 2:00 here. I'm going to take off shortly. So I will leave it at that. We've had a great conversation. Any last words, guys? I'll let Jared go first.
Oh, right to left. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. It's late at night. I'm just gonna go with my usual focus on the positive influence you can have on your direct circle. Try not to get overwhelmed by the malevolence of the world.
Lukey? Well, I guess I want to say is, since I'm getting close to finishing up my graduate course and stuff, and I think that one thing is fundamental in life is doing a little bit each day, whatever you can, however you can, and being consistent with it. So even if things are hard right now, just keep doing what you know is right, whether it's related to diet, whether it's related to your life, and things will improve even if they are bad right now. And that's what has made such a difference for me. I went through a lot, but now I feel much better.
Yeah, that's good to hear, mate. And what I would say to people, even though I do preach tough love, and it's important because people need to be responsible and take responsibility for their lives and what they do and all that. At the same time, those who are your loved ones and all that, who may be going through a difficult patch or whatever, occasionally, there's nothing wrong with basically just going up there and just giving them a hug and telling them that you love them and reminding them that you care, and that things are going to be okay, and try and work with them. So there's nothing wrong with that, so that's really important, that we just don't focus on selfishly on our own dietary sort of preoccupations or our own work or whatever else. Really important that we remember that people around us are important. And you know what? When you hug somebody or kiss somebody or just, have that moment with them, you know how much better you feel inside? It's so pleasant. Doing good makes you feel good inside.
It does.
Absolutely.
It's a great feeling. So, yeah. So be good and do good out there, and you'll get rewarded for it. Anyway, guys, take care. See yous. I will see these two lovely gentlemen. Will potentially see you guys next week if they're around. I will see you guys in about 4 hours from now. So with the late shift. So, and we've got hopefully we don't have any problems communicating with Mary, but Mary's coming on, Mary Ruddock from Cape Town. Now, hopefully we don't have any internet issues. We've had issues in the past. I remember once we actually bombed out in a connection, so hopefully nothing happens. But, look, these things happen sometimes. So if she's around only for a short amount of time or for a long time, usually if Mary comes on, she'll stay on for quite a few hours. She does that. She gets really involved in it, the conversation, and she takes over my channel completely, which is fine. That's fine. I'll let her go. Give me a rest in that regard, and she can answer a whole lot of people's questions. I know a lot of people that are in North America that don't have an opportunity to be up because they're asleep at the time. I've seen there's a number of people that have put questions in the announcement that I did make, which was really nice. So I've got a whole lot of questions I can ask her. I will prioritize those questions, and any odd question here or there that's going to be on the live stream that other people will put up. So that will be my focus. If I get a chance to ask any of mine, fine. If I don't, I'll have to leave them for next time. A lot of the things that I was going to ask Mary, people have already asked them, so I'm going to use their questions, not mine, out of respect for them. So they went to the effort of actually typing it all up and all that and thinking about it. So I'll use their questions as a priority, and then any other little things that we've missed out. And the whole focus is the way I want to approach this, and I think the other guys would agree with me, is that there are so many questions that are like the little nuanced things. How do they do this? How do they do that? Those little things, they are so insightful. It's things that, most academics turn up and go, oh, just give us a gross thing of what you're eating, or gross thing of this or that. And then the rest of it, they fill in their own biases. What I like that I've seen some questions which are really nice is, and the thing that I like about Mary is she focuses on the little intricacies, and that tells you more about their lifestyle and really how things work than any of the other stuff. So, yes, Jared's in pussy paradise there, I can see.
Got a couple of cats here.
Where's Butter hiding?
She was just walking behind me on the couch.
Yeah, I saw her, but okay, she jumped off the other end.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Was that bacon?
This is eggs.
Oh, that's eggs, is it? Where's bacon?
Probably asleep upstairs somewhere.
Okay.
Bacon's our little black cat. Eggs is gray.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Oh, well, grey and black, they're not too dissimilar, but anyway. Yeah. I agree. Yes, black is different. Sorry, eggs.
She doesn't mind too much.
Could have come up with a better word than calling it eggs. Next you'll call her scrambled eggs.
Scrambled eggs.
Scrambling, that's what I call her when she's running around the house all crazy, when she gets the night crazies. She's scrambling. Scrambled eggs.
Anyway, guys, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And I will say and wish all these lovely people that have been watching us goodbye, good night, good day, wherever you are on this planet, this globe revolving planet. And I hope, your lives are getting better. You're basically not being overwhelmed by too much of the craziness out there, pretty much. So don't let it get to you, guys. Just focus on the important things of life. There's always going to be idiots out there running around. The world's coming to an end. Doing all these crazy things. You can't focus on them. They're just, they've lost the plot. And hopefully they'll come back to the human race at some point and realize that they've lost the plot. One can only hope. So, do a prayer for them now and then, because they need it. They desperately need it. Anyway, God bless, guys. Thanks for being here. Take care. And I will see some of you 4 hours time, the rest of you next week. Anyway, see yous. One announcement. I will be at home this week. I'm taking on some extra leave, and I expect a few more vids this week.
Ooh,
cool.
Interesting.
Teasing.
Yes, I've got to tease. You've got to tease the crowd. I'm not going to tell them what, but I'm going to tease them. Anyway, see yous.
Bye, everyone.